I'll call the meeting of the Lake Forest City Council to order. Thank you for coming tonight. Councilman Robinson is on his way. He's been delayed in traffic. He's coming from Sacramento, so he'll be joining us as soon as he gets here. And welcome to those of you in the audience and to the thousands of people watching us on Facebook live streaming. Tonight we are live streaming our City Council, and for those of you watching on Facebook, later you will be able to make comments and ask questions when the people who are here in the audience are finished with their session. So welcome to everybody, and welcome especially to the people who take the time to come out here tonight. We'll begin with the invocation, and the invocation will be read by Blake Wellstein from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Thank you for being here.
Our dear Father in heaven, we are indeed grateful for this evening and for the opportunity we have to be gathered together as members of the Lake Forest community to discuss this community and how we might be able to better serve and to assist its members and to help its continued growth and progress. We pray, dear Father, that would please bestow a portion of thy Spirit to bless all those here present, that they might be able to discuss and work together to help this community in its many endeavors. We pray, dear Father, that we might be able to act as thy servants. And these things we do say in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. It says on the agenda that the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Council Member Cagley, but there are some Boy Scouts in the house, and whenever there are Boy Scouts in the house, I like to put them to work. So our Boy Scouts have agreed to lead us tonight in the Pledge of Allegiance. So, guys, please come up.
Boy Scouts from Troop 1210, thank you for being with us.
Those not in uniform, please place your right hands over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. How many people were greeted tonight when you came in? Yeah, very good. How many people saw our pre-show slideshow? And that will be changing every week. So some additions we're making to the City Council meeting. We had a closed session earlier tonight, and I need to ask the City Attorney, do you have anything to report back to us?
There's no action to report tonight, Mr. Mayor.
You never have any action to report, do you?
If it's not reportable, there's no action
What
to
are we
report.
doing there, meeting every week, and you never have anything to report? Okay. Next on our agenda are City Council ceremonial items, and the first item is the comments by our incoming City Council member, Colonel Tom Cagley.
Good evening. I'm glad you all are here and are watching on the Facebook, I guess. Generally, I like to keep my comments short and to the point. I may be a little longer than usual. This is my first opportunity to speak to the people in the council chambers, from colleagues on the dais and city manager and other staff. And it's most important people in the room, the residents who come here, some of you on a regular basis, to watch your local government in action. After Dr. Gardner won election 2014, I seem to recall his maiden speech to the council was about the same length as the President's State of the Union message last week. Mine will not be that long, I assure you. Before going further, I do want to acknowledge my wife, Nancy, who's here. She was allowed to come to the meeting this evening. She's in rehabilitation following a stroke. Her doctor said she could come this evening as it would be therapeutic. I'm not certain that means he thinks I'll put her to sleep for some much needed rest, or it's healthy for her to be here. I hope I don't put any of you to sleep. I'm not going to dwell too much on my personal background. Martin Henderson wrote an extensive article covering my background before the election. I don't need to repeat that, but here are some of the highlights. I grew up in an agriculture community in the Midwest, spent over 3 decades as a Soviet Union specialist in the military, our military, and have served as a project manager on multi-million-dollar building and infrastructure projects. I served in the Orange County Grand Jury for a year and for several years as an on-call member of the Texas Emergency Operations Center in Austin, Texas. I'd be asked to go to Austin following hurricanes, mudslides, and wildfires to assist with disaster mitigation. Then Texas realized that Yorba Linda, where I lived at the time, was not an El Paso suburb, and Texas law required that you live in Texas to be on their EOC, so they asked me to retire, which I did. However, that is history. The present and the near future is what is important to us. At the last council meeting, a resident spoke to the special election held on January 2nd and lamented that only 19% of Lake Forest residents voted. I wish it had been 19%. It was actually less than 15%. And that is a problem near every local election across the country, failure of residents to actively participate in their local government, the one level that has most direct impact on their lives. This segues into what another resident said at the same meeting about HOA activities. I cannot speak to other HOAs, but where I live, it is always a challenge to get enough residents to vote to elect new board members or confirm the existing board members. This is sad because HOAs have an even greater impact on residents than City Council. Mayor Gardner has proposed an HOA council, which would be at least one step of perhaps gaining the residents' participation in those individuals that directly impact on their lives. One of the concerns I have about the election of Lake Forest is struggle for candidates to get their message or their position to the voters. We rail at campaign contributions, oppose them, but in lieu of other vehicles, mailings and other literature is about the only way candidates can reach the voters, the potential voters. The media cannot be relied upon. I don't think the Orange County Register or the Voice of OC understand that Irvine is not the furthest south city in Orange County, that we do exist and we could deliver coverage from them. I would prefer, and I think most candidates can concur, an opportunity to appear before voters in a debate or a question-and-answer session. During this just completed campaign, there were no gathering of all the candidates. In 2014, Lake Forest 2 HOA held a candidates forum and Communications held a candidates forum. The same was done in 2016. But Lake Forest 2 declined to hold a candidates forum for this special election we had. I'm delighted that more than 50% of the people voting checked my name, and I was no impressed because I had sought this position in 2014 and had a half dozen volunteers who placed literature at homes registered voters. I think we could serve the public better if we could give all the candidates the opportunity to become known to the public. We need to give the public, the voters, an opportunity to get to know their candidates. This can be done best through HOA and public forums held in this room or in other rooms around the city as permissible by law. I support limitation on cash contributions to campaigns. I think the HOAs could play a very positive role in the election if they would be proactive in holding forums for candidates, and not just for the council, but for sheriff, board of supervisors, Congress, and other applicable elections, especially county judges, because nobody knows who they're voting for and is checking the judges in the ballots. My apologies if this appears to be far afield, but over the past year there have been recalls or attempted recalls of council members in Fullerton, Costa Mesa, Fountain Valley, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, and of course here in Lake Forest. People are often upset at the cost of recall elections. While the figures are cited are frequently inflated, the best way to avoid recalls is to elect the best candidates. The best way to elect the best candidates is to get to know them through public forum. Another concern voiced by a lot of chatter on social media is about a new gang of three. I think that is unfounded, but only time and votes on issues will tell. What I think should be of concern to the residents is a gang of 5. I was chatting with a councilman from another city a few months ago, and he said that their council sessions lasted only about 45 minutes or so. He said there were never any public comments, and all staff reports except by the council with very limited debate and discussion. That city is somewhat smaller than Lake Forest, but like most cities has departments to run, traffic and parking issues to resolve, and budgets to manage. No matter how talented and qualified the staff may be, and Lake Forest staff is very qualified, there should be some discussion and exchange of thoughts about most matters coming before City Council. If all we're going to do is just sit here and agree with each other or disagree all as one, you probably should consider firing 4 of us, because we're superfluous if we're all going to agree together. General Patton said about his staff, if you all agree with me, I don't need you. You've got to have input and from all of us in our own opinion, our own thoughts. I enjoy the public comments, particularly I'd hate to see that go away. Many nuggets of ideas are revealed, and certainly concerns of residents become known or better known. The Mayor Pro Tem became known because of the issues about Saddleback Valley Ranch Road, and that was important, and the animal shelter has been because of public comments. We don't want to shut them out. We need the public input. At least 3 of us on this dais made resignation from the podium in front of you before we became members of the City Council, myself, Dr. Gardner, and Leah. Thank you for your patience and attention. I'm looking forward to this year. The mayor has laid out an aggressive agenda of things we want to accomplish. Hope we can get a lot of it accomplished. We will not agree, and I'm sure you'll be all in favor of all the projects that he got planned for us. We'll disagree with him as we need to. But I think we have a lot to accomplish. We'll get a lot accomplished with less acrimony we've seen over the last few years. I believe Councilman Robinson said it at a prior council session some time back. We can disagree without being disagreeable, and that's what should be our goal. Thank you very much.
Incidentally, Colonel Cagley won with the largest percentage ever in the history of the city. So congratulations to him. And congratulations, if you don't know, this is his wife sitting in the front row in the purple sweater, and he would not be here today. None of us would not be here today if we didn't have spouses who put up with us. So congratulations to you, Nancy. Thank you for being here. Our next item on the agenda is a resolution recognizing Scott Voight on his term as mayor in 2017. Do we have the... Scott Voight, as probably all of you know, is our previous mayor. His list of accomplishments is so long that I'm not going to read it, which is no offense to him. Scott is a genius at the ribbon cuttings. Nobody does it better. Everybody hates going after you in a ribbon cutting because he does those things so well. And he's worked really hard for the city, and it's not easy being on the city council. It's even harder being a mayor. So we really appreciate all your hard work and all of your accomplishments during your term last year. Congratulations. Thank you, sir.
Now, we've got a large scheduled meeting tonight, so I'm holding off my council comments, my outgoing mayor's comment until the end of the meeting at the request of the mayor. But I want to say that I love Lake Forest. I think Lake Forest is a great shining beacon of success. We've been here. We're the gateway to South Orange County, and I love living in Lake Forest, and it's been an honor to serve as mayor. And I know that Mayor Gardner will do a wonderful job. And so I wish you all well in 2018, and I'll close my rest of my comments for later. Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Jefferson. I'm here on behalf of Congresswoman Mimi Walters to award you, sir, with this Certificate of Special Congressional Recognition for your time as mayor. And we all hope to see the great work you have planned with this council coming here.
Thank you, sir. Okay, let's get a picture. 1, 2, 3. Thank you for coming, Jefferson.
The next items on the agenda, 5 and 6, as former Mayor Voight said, we're going to put at the end of the meeting because the meeting we have so many things to do, and hopefully we won't take so long doing them. So those will come up at the end during our council comment sections. Normally we would have our report from our student liaison, but she's not here tonight, so we will move on to presentations. I'd like a motion.
Presentation.
Second.
Please vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. City Clerk.
Proclamation declaring the week of February 18th through the 24th, 2018 as National Engineers Week, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Thank you for approving the proclamation designating Engineers Week as the week of February 18th as National Engineers Week. And really, that's a week that helps emphasize engineering and helps emphasize math and sciences to the next generation, and helps highlight what the engineering profession does for not only society in this community, but for as a potential option for kids and grandkids and others growing up to become engineers. So with that, thank you again for accepting that proclamation.
Thank you. We rely heavily on engineers for just about everything that we do in the city. The next part is Colonel Cadley's favorite part, mine too, public comments. And I remember, for those of you who weren't here last week, I've remembered my glasses this week. At this time, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. No action may be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person and an overall time limit of 30 minutes for the public comments portion of the agenda. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether or not it appears on this agenda, is requested to complete a request to speak form available at the door. The completed form is to be submitted to the City Clerk prior to an individual being heard by the City Council. When you are called to speak, you will see 3 lights, the first being green. When you have 30 seconds left, the light will turn to yellow, and when your time has expired, the light will turn to red. Never stopped my wife. At that time, your public comment period has ended, and the council requests that you conclude your comments and save any further comments for a future meeting. And those of you who are watching live on Facebook will get a chance to have your comments presented once the people who are here have their chance to present their comments. Madam Clerk, how many people do we have on the agenda ready to speak?
6, Your Honor.
6, okay. Some nights we have a lot, and then we have to limit the time to 2 minutes, but with 6, there's plenty of time. So who's one?
Mr. George Borden by Andrew O'Connor.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is George Borden. I'm a resident of City of Lake Forest. Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you for having me here tonight. I've been asked to come to the City Council meeting tonight and ask what the city's efforts are to combat vandalism and of property in our city. The Sheriff's Department has reported that most property theft and vandalism of unlocked vehicles and storage areas is usually committed by persons needing drug money. Okay. So first I'd like to tell you what we've done in our community. As manager of the Seniors Park, I've been authorized by our park owners to institute a neighborhood watch program which works very closely with the Sheriff's Department. Our team has implemented the crime prevention tools that were given to us and continues to educate our residents on a regular basis to report incidences of vandalism to the police and to be diligent in using the tools we've been given excuse me, to prevent crimes using those methods. So what has the city done to support us in this matter? Because we are a mobile home park, we have been the target of these types of crimes. We'd like to know what the current status is for crime prevention by the city so we can take this information and feedback to our residents and to our park owners. And I'd like to close by saying thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak here this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for presenting, and thank you, by the way, for sending your comments early. We were able to read that and absorb what you had to say, so thank you for doing that. But you did say something really important, and that is community involvement. It's critical, you know, that neighbors are speaking to each other and, you know, encouraging each other to be more responsible with locking their doors and things like that. But you had a question for the Sheriff's Department, so maybe I could kind of segue over to you and ask you if there's anything that you can share about efforts that you can do on a sheriff's level that might assist the residents in that community.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So the Sheriff's Department has a crime prevention program, which I'm sure you're aware of. Our crime prevention specialist has an active neighborhood watch in that community. She's there about 5 times a year, every couple of months, sharing updates with them and trying to educate the residents of that community on how to protect themselves through the Don't Make It Easy campaign. How to lock up your sheds, lock your vehicles, outside lighting. I know they worked with the HOA of that park to have perimeter lights and things fixed and added, as well as going around to the residents and having them install motion lights and things like this. I believe there was a gentleman that was doing that for free, walking around and doing that and supplying those. So there's been a lot of efforts within that community, and there is still activity in that community, and it's a constant effort to address those types of issues. The Don't Make It Easy campaign is a citywide campaign. It's not just the Sheriff's Department, and the city has put funds towards getting that message out with videos and literature and things like that. And the Sheriff's Department will continue to be active with the crime prevention program, and as well as patrol checks from the officers in the area. So,
thank you. We work very closely with Sheriff Shannon Daniels. She's amazing, and most of your staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And George, just on behalf of the whole council, thank you for helping with that Neighborhood Watch program. The fact is that's what actually is the lifeblood of what we help to keep our neighborhoods more safe. So thank you so much for being involved with that, and your involvement is very much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Andrew O'Connor, followed by Bob Holtzclaw.
By the way, Mr. Gordon did something that the Mayor Pro Tem talked about, which was sent his comments in advance, and that gives us a chance to actually read them and look at them, talk to the police chief, etc. So for anybody planning to do that, I would recommend you do the same thing, and thank you, Mr. Gordon. Andy?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Attorney, City Manager. My name is Andrew O'Connor from Foothill Ranch, resident since 1990. I'm here tonight to talk about Scott Voight and our arch enemy, the City of Irvine. Last year, I approached the council on my concerns of then Mayor Scott Voight being an employee for the City of Irvine as an advisor to Mayor Wagner. The City Attorney concluded there was no conflict. I beg to differ. Please see my exhibit, number 1, dated January 17th, 2018, from the City of Irvine, from Debbie Tracy, the Municipal Records Administrator, where she provided the detailed hours that our mayor at that time, Scott Voight, was doing in the City of Irvine. And if we look, our mayor spent close to 1,400 hours in the City of Irvine. 1,400 hours, and he got paid $24.03 an hour. His gross income was $33,593. And at the same time, you were the mayor of Lake Forest. And if you look at the data that's provided here, it shows you're working an average of 6 hours a day. And if you drive there and back, 30 minutes over, 30 minutes back, that's 7 hours away from the City of Lake Forest that you were the mayor of. I have business people have told me that you have promoted the City of Irvine over moving to the City of Lake Forest. I have that in writing. I have that in video. And you better come clear on it, Councilman Voight, as you sit there and laugh. Okay? I would like to know the following. What activities were you involved in the City of Irvine? Did you promote the City of Irvine over the City of Lake Forest? And third, how many hours are you going to work in 2018 for the City of Irvine if you did 1,400 in 2017? I think the residents would need to know, and I think the sooner you get this out, the better. Thank you.
Bob Holtzclaw, followed by Sandy Jones.
You know, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, my day job has no responsibility of what I do here as a ceremonial position and this city council. The fact is that the City of Lake Forest, if you ever miss me at a ribbon cutting, in Lake Forest, you are just outside of reality, because I always am at the ribbon cuttings for Lake Forest, and that I'm the most active of all the council members at ribbon cuttings. And so my love for City of Lake Forest is always at the foremost of what I do. So I want to say thank you for your comments, Mr. O'Connell, but the fact that you trying to shut down our Lake Forest businesses is just way beyond the call of actually loving the City of Lake Forest. And the fact that I'm there to represent the mayor of Irvine when I'm working in Irvine, but when I come to Lake Forest, I'm all Lake Forest. And so thank you for your comments, Mr. O'Connell.
Next.
Okay. Hi, Bob Holtzclaw, resident of Lake Forest and also appointee for vector control. This is my first report. Actually, there wasn't really that much happening at the first meeting. We had elections, and Lucille Karn from Anaheim is now the president of Vector Control. Cheryl Brothers is from Fountain Valley is vice president, and Sherry Holm is from Laguna Woods is the secretary. The only actual news we had was from Richard Howard, the district manager, and he gave a small report. One is that we only had 2.5 inches of rain this year. The season start, in the middle of the year. It's ends in June 30th and starts in July 1st. We're already in our last rainy day month. Usually it's December, January, and February. We get our the majority of the rain, and we're already well into February, and we've only had 2.5 inches. We're looking at probably a drought, and I don't know if last year was just a fluke. But we should watch what we water out around the gardens and everything else. That's just about, quite frankly, the biggest thing that's happened there. And then, of course, I'll be there tomorrow, and I'm going to do a walkthrough through the area and everything else. Tomorrow I was invited up. One other thing here I have also is recycled water. We're building that Veterans Park, and we're going to have a pond there. We can't have recycled water in it. I wish we could. And the thing is I've talked to Irvine Water, and they say it's a state problem. You talk to the state, and they say it's the EPA, the federal government. Most of you have connections with either our state representatives and also our federal. Maybe we should get together on this and see if we can't get recycled water for our lakes. I've been to the Irvine recycling area. My gosh, that water there's no odor to it. There's no bacteria in it once it goes out through that purple pipe. So it's completely clean. That's about it, except for one other thing I'd like to talk about is our calendar. January has 31 days, guys. So that's one thing. Also, could we add some things into our calendar for next year, such as maybe World War II, something for the teenagers to look at, Pearl Harbor, when the state was actually a state.
Your time's up, but please send us an email with your suggestion.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And by the way, the Veterans Park is served by El Toro Water District, not by the Irvine Water District.
Well, it doesn't matter, because
No,
it's the state and the federal government are going back and forth. It's whose problem is it?
And Mr. Holtzclaw, your extra comments into the calendar has been duly noted. I made that suggestion to the city manager and staff about that, because I would like to see more history, facts, and holidays in our calendar too.
Yeah, it'd be great. We have Christmas. Why not Easter?
Thank you.
That's
I agree.
Next.
Sandy Jones, followed by Heiko Peschel.
Good evening, Mayor Gardner and council members. It's actually Sandy Jones and Taylor Jones. She's 4.5, joining me tonight, multitasking. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm with the University of California, Irvine. I'm also a small business owner. My husband and I own CrossFit Forest and Big Ranch Yoga in the city of Lake Forest, and it's a wonderful place to do business and be. But I'm here tonight to talk as a board member of the South Orange County Economic Coalition. You may be familiar with the group. It's instrumental in building and supporting a strong regional economy. Our goal is to promote regional business interests, and on behalf of our organization, I gave you a flyer, and I apologize if I knew comments could be submitted ahead of time. I will do that next time. But you do have a flyer with information on it, and our organization graciously provided you with 2 complimentary tickets to be given to your city manager or an economic development individual or all of yourselves. You're more than welcome to join us. We would love to see you there. This report that we'll be providing will illustrate a $28.5 billion impact of our South County cities. Community information is also provided at the city level as a comparison of each city's contribution. I'm sure Lake Forest will be top on that list. And you're also going to be given in a preliminary report. There'll be a larger event following at a later time. So there's information in that flyer. I just wanted to make sure you and the community is aware of this organization and our challenge to really promote the huge economic impact of our region. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much.
And my daughter loved that calendar, by the way.
Sandy, thank you. We want to thank the South Orange County Economic Coalition for all they do in supporting our local business. You know, local small business and large business is what the lifeblood of all of our cities thrive on. So you guys are the lifeblood of what we all are and why we're such a vibrant community as a region from Irvine South. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Colonel Cagley and Councilman Voight are regular visitors. I'm an irregular visitor, so we thank you for the 2 comp tickets.
Thank you.
Heiko Peschel, followed by Bob Stewart.
Heiko Peschel, Fort Portola, Foothill Ranch. Been a resident of the neighborhood since 1960, so I've been here longer than most. A couple things. First, congratulations to Colonel Cagley from an old enlisted man. Second, congratulations to the lieutenant and the rest of the sheriff's department for the increased presence up in Foothill Ranch. I've noticed a lot more folks. And I just made a small deduction. Of the 40 houses on our part of the street, we have 4 peace officers, 2 deputy sheriffs, a SWAT team member, and a detective. It makes it a very quiet street. Nobody comes up there to bother us very much. Plus which we all talk to each other about who's going on vacation. Also, thanks to Shannon Daniels for all the work she's doing to take care of the city. And for those of you out here who want the city to do more work, it has to start with you. You and your neighbors have to take care of your neighborhood. It works much better that way. Okay, continuation of Portola Parkway, an old bugaboo, something I like to talk about. Everybody tells me how expensive it would be to take a Caterpillar tractor through there and just drive it from Portola here to Portola and Irvine. It can't be that bad. The orange and avocado groves are going out of style fairly fast back there. Some of my favorite running territory for many years was back in that area, and I know it reasonably well. Also, I'd like to see a closer study of traffic here in the city. I've noticed over the last few years, especially now with the increase of housing out in Portola, the amount of traffic coming through Foothill Ranch and the area around it has really increased. And last, I'd like to see the council look at future development and try to keep it on a reasonable basis. Again, thank you all very much.
Bob Stewart.
Good evening, Council. Congratulations, Colonel. Welcome aboard. Since I'm retired, I went to Getty Villa in Malibu, and I got this refrigerator magnet with a great quote from billionaire J. Paul Getty. He said, "Money isn't everything, but it sure keeps you in touch with your children." So money isn't everything, but it keeps you in touch with the children. My hope in this city is that it doesn't become this quote, money is everything. It sure keeps council members in touch with their donors. Hopefully, district elections can prevent this. Speaking of districts, I'm an advocate for District 2. And I'd like to ask fellow District 2 council member Robinson, if you could help me, sir. Mr. Robinson, do you live in District 2?
I was elected at large, so I live next to Serrano Creek Park, but I was elected to represent all of the residents of Lake Forest, not any specific district. We haven't had district elections yet.
But you live in District 2?
I live Serrano Creek, so
okay.
I believe that is District 2.
So I'd like to ask you for help. I'm having trouble as a HOA member, board member, trying to get a covers put on 5, one for each member of the board, 5 tables in Peachwood Park. And so I thought perhaps since I've seen you at Bagels and Brew and so on, maybe you could help me work through this bureaucracy. And we're even willing, as a board member, to have temporary. There are 5 things. I realize, because I've talked to Mr. Wasserman, I realize they may move the tables, but our impression is this may be completed in 2021. So we have a couple questions. First, do you think the City Hall will be finished before they put the 5 covers in Peachwood Park? And secondly, could you, sir, help me? I'm just a simple 64-year-old retiree. I ran for City Council in Huntington. I see I still got a green light. But I'd like some help cutting through the bureaucracy, even if they just put temporary covers, and then if they relocate per Scott's input, I'd appreciate that.
I'd be happy to assist with that. I'm sure Colonel Cagley would probably also be interested since he also lives in District 2. So
there you go. I thought he was in District 3, but all right.
Well, I'm interested. I'm not in District 2. I hope you won't discount my help.
I'll take help wherever I can get it, but what so far I've gotten.
Mr. Stewart, I think we're all obliged to help you. So thank
okay.
you.
Then now the gang of 5 can help us get 5 table covers. If you each contribute 1, and I come out and smile, I hereby invite you with the yellow light on to bring your grandkids or friends or neighbors, fellow board members, and come on and sit out in the sun sometime and see if indeed, because I lived 22 years in Huntington, so when I made the transition to Lake Forest, I have a red light. Please help us. Thank you very much.
Scott,
Thank
can
you.
you speak to that?
Mine works really well.
There are a couple ways to go with this. We are in the middle of the process of doing the workshops for the parks. The workshop for Peachwood Park is actually tomorrow night.
I'll be there.
Yep, 7 o'clock at the sports park. Mr. Stewart and I have spoken a couple times. I did look into temporary shade structures. I haven't found any. I haven't found any.
Home Depot.
Pardon me?
Home Depot.
Usually the shade structures that we put up in parks are engineered, they're put in the ground, to withstand wind and rain and things like that. There are 2 ways to go with this that I see. One is we can go through the process, and Mr. Stewart and others, you may decide that you like the ideas for redesigning the park to come from the park designer, in which case you might opt to wait for the park redesign for the shade structures. And you're correct, that would likely, not 2021, but it would likely be a year from now.
This is alarming, Board. This is alarming. Listen to this. 5 covers that were taken down by Congressman or Board Member Nick because I went out there and said if someone doesn't come and get them next week, I'm going to push them over. They were so full of termites and water damage. They were removed in 1 day. And now we're hearing 20 what? 20 re-election time?
I didn't get to finish. So one way is to wait for the park redesign. Part of that would include the shade structures. That is part of a 10-park project. That's why things are moving slowly. The other option is if people really come out for Peachwood Park and all they want is the shade structures and they're not interested in that portion of the redesign, in other words, moving those picnic tables out of essentially what is the middle of the park to free up the middle of the park as an activity area, then we could potentially move faster to replace the shade structures with something more permanent. But I would caution against putting up temporary canopies because those fall. They get blown over, they fall, kids climb on them. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. But that's what I would see. So I would suggest that we wait until the meeting tomorrow to see the ideas of the park designer, and then if people from that area, all they really want are the shade structures, we could potentially look at doing that and expediting that.
Let's talk about that tomorrow. I'll be there, so we can...
Thank you. Thank you all.
And don't feel as if you're being picked on. It's taken me over a year to get a dog, a shade at the dog park. So these things are not so easy to do, but we'll handle it tomorrow.
That's why we have a new, capable mayor to get things done.
Hey, Bob, I will see you tomorrow night, too.
Any more speakers?
We've had no further requests.
Okay, we have 5 more minutes left. Do we have anybody live streaming instant messaging?
No official requests.
No official requests. Okay. Hey, wake up! What are you guys doing? Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, I just want to make a couple
Sure.
of comments.
No, absolutely.
First of all, with the last issue that we were just talking about, and if I end up going too far, Mr. City Attorney, please feel free to stop me. But I think the disconnect that some residents are feeling is there's a difference between a park redesign and maintenance. I think we all acknowledge that, and so that's where the frustration lies, and I think that it's very fair level of frustration. That when something that has been in the park for a while degrades to a point where we have to remove it, then how quickly are we going to replace it? And I understand this is one of those anomalies where we're in the process of redesigning it, but I think that we need to establish a very good process of both communication to residents as well as a plan for what is an acceptable amount of time to wait until we do something specific with something that has degraded to a significant level and that it's been removed. So in my mind, I think they've probably waited too long. At the same time, we've got to this point now. I would say from the get-go, when we took that down, we should have probably had a process for replacing it. And maybe that meant just breaking this one park out of the 10-park study so that we could move on it a little bit more quickly, or just replacing the structures themselves. But I see this as more, I'm very concerned about the specific issue, but on a grander scale, I'm concerned about the process and making sure that this doesn't happen again at other parks. So I'd like to see us work on that, try to figure out what that process should be, both from a communication standpoint as well as a maintenance and repair standpoint. So, thank you.
Mr. City Manager, or City Mayor? The resident came forward and wanted clarification on what we got as the ability for council members to have a daytime job, whether it be the City of Lake Forest or the Port of Los Angeles or the City of Laguna Hills. Do we get outside counsel's opinion on that? Not only Beth Krieger?
Mayor and members of the council, we hired an outside attorney to come in and take a look at that issue, and we issued a public report. And the finding was there was no conflict posed by your employment with the City of Irvine. So we could, that agenda item is available online now, so I don't recall the exact date, but someone could look it up by putting in keywords.
Now, in my recollection, I don't think as mayor for the City of Lake Forest, I missed any ribbon cutting for the City of Lake Forest last year, and I think Mayor Gardner will testify to that. I'm at most all ribbon cuttings, yeah. So I'm 100% dedicated to the City of Lake Forest, and I want to say that I love the City of Lake Forest, and I'm not only responsible to the people here in the audience, but those that are residents in the community. I have a large amount of my family that live in Lake Forest. My mother, my mother-in-law, 3 of my brothers live in Lake Forest. My brother-in-law, my sister-in-law. I have 2 cousins that live in Newport. They work for Newport Police Department, and they live in Lake Forest. And so I'm not only accountable to the residents here, but the fact is that when I go to my Christmas dinner at my mom's house, all they ask me about is Lake Forest. And so I'm always being held accountable to a higher standard. So my devotion and love is for the City of Lake Forest. And so I just wanted to clarify that one more time and say that I'm always loyal to the City of Lake Forest. Thank you.
Item number 8, the consent calendar, the warrant register. All matters listed under the warrant register are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items be removed from the warrant register for separate action. Madam Clerk, have there been any requests to pull an item from the warrant register?
No, sir.
Colleagues, anybody want to pull?
Move the warrant register.
Second.
Well, I have one item I want to move, but will you consider changing it to approving except for that one item?
Which item?
I'd like to pull item 11 and 15.
But we're only doing...
I'm sorry, we're on the warrant register.
Oh, the
just
warrant
doing number
register.
8.
Sorry, consent calendar.
Okay.
No problem on the warrant register.
All right, so we're on the warrant register, and the motion from Councilman Voight is to approve all except the one pulled, and the second is from Mayor Pro Tem Basil. Can we get a vote on that?
Point of clarification, what warrant are you pulling?
The Schenkman warrant?
Thank you.
Okay, we voting?
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay. I'm pulling the Schenkman warrant. Schenkman is the, as my colleagues up here know, but perhaps the audience doesn't know, Schenkman is the attorney from Malibu who threatened to sue the city unless we move to districts. And on that basis, we moved to districts and didn't get $1 million lawsuit, but instead we're having to pay him the $30,000 I'm trying to come up with the word that he won't sue me for. Bounty. Ransom is probably too hard a word, but we're having to pay him $30,000 as a result of him having asked us to do that. About 3 years ago, Councilman Nick, when he was on the council, and I put forward the idea of moving to districts, and it was defeated at the time. And had we done it then, we wouldn't be paying the $30,000 today, and we wouldn't be in the awkward position that we're in with regard to the council having to force districts, which we had to do, and it was the right decision to do, and then people voting, and then in 2018, whatever districts we've set up now are going to be different from the ones that were in 2020, and then we're going to change again in 22. So we're in an awkward situation that could have been avoided had we had the foresight to go ahead and move to districts years ago. The reason I bring that up now is I think we made a mistake in our plan for the districts last year. And I believe we had the same lack of foresight going forward that we exhibited for this $30,000 Schenkman ransom. And so what I'd like to do is to consider bring back the district thing so that we could do a better job in the district thing so that going forward we don't have the same kind of problem we're having with Schenkman now. So if I could get consensus.
I'm open to a discussion, so I'll second.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'll move the balance. Second?
Second.
And vote? This brings us to the consent calendar. Items number 9 through 16. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these. I just said this, didn't I? There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Have there been any requests to remove any item from the consent calendar?
No, sir.
Colleagues?
11.
Number 11. Oh, that's a good one. Good choice.
Well, thank you.
Any others?
I have 11 and 15.
Oh, okay. Oh, 15, that's right. 15, another good choice. Do you hate that at restaurants when people say that to you? Good choice. All right, then I'll take a motion to...
Move the remainder.
Second.
Okay, please vote. And that brings us to item 11, pulled by Mayor Pro Tem Basil.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, on that last vote, I'm sorry, I just need to display it. That motion passes unanimously, and then clear it.
Oh, is that too fast? At my age, that's a compliment. Item 11, pulled by Mayor Pro Tem Basil and Councilman Robinson, the Normandale Drive and Regency Lane traffic study.
No, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Thanks. First of all, I wanted to say I feel like very thorough report. You did a great job of going through the process with the Planning Commission. I like the suggestions that have been outlined. It sounds like there's support from the neighborhood there. And so my interest, again, is just more from a broader perspective. I'm interested because in this particular item, we were reactionary. There was an accident where a car ended up in a home, nearly killed some folks. We can't legislate against stupidity and recklessness and, testosterone and whatever it might have been that caused that. But we've identified some things that we can do to make that particular area a little bit more safe. So legends and the signs that are being suggested to be added. What I'm interested in is what other parts of town would fall into that same area so we can be proactive rather than reactionary. And so it just kind of dovetails with this item. I'm not sure how we'd bring it up otherwise, so that's what I wanted to bring up, that we start looking at some other streets in the city and trying to identify ones that would fall into that same category. So where there's some blind curves or because of the elevation going up, whatever it might be, that line of sight isn't at the most optimum level, and using the same methodology used here, use in other parts of the city. So that's what I'd like to see, and I'm interested in hearing my colleagues' comments as well.
My comments were, for the most part, complimentary. I think that it was a very comprehensive report. You guys took into account every possible scenario. You gave answers for everything, and the reasoning behind the decisions that you chose. I thought it was very well thought out. You guys really put a lot of work into it, so I want to thank you for that. But dovetailing on Councilman Robinson's comments, the role of government, do we want to be more reactionary, or do we want to be more proactive? And I think that this council, more so than several of the past, we seem to want to be more proactive. And I think maybe a good solution for finding these roads in the communities where could use some help is maybe we could be reaching out to our local HOAs. I mean, the HOA boards, they know everything that's going on. They know every tree that needs to be trimmed. They know their communities. So maybe a big step for the city might be, as far as like the HOA forum that we're planning in a few months, this might be something that we could bring up at that forum where we can have them and maybe provide them with an initiative that these are the things that we want to talk about, so that when they come to the meeting they are prepared, they know what we're asking for, and maybe we can get some collaboration from our local communities and have more of a community engagement. And I think it might help to solve the problem. Instead of you guys driving up and down every single street and not knowing where to start, I think that might be a really good place to start. That was it.
Just to dovetail on what you both said, I'm still waiting, and it's over a year, for the accident report from citywide, and it's been promised many times and still not delivered. So, and that would be a useful resource, because if we identified areas of the city where we're having more accidents, that might be a likely place to go. And I like, the HOA forum, which is next month. That will be an excellent opportunity. And I agree with you both. A good report. And by the way, I think all of those things can be done for, what was the figure, $5,000 or something like that? Wasn't a major expense.
Correct, about $5,000 for those improvements. It doesn't include the staff time for the research.
Well, staff time is very expensive. So. But yeah, that's a lot of work, and yet for $5,000. Yeah.
Your Honor, I'd like to put in a plug that I put in frequently, as you used to also. This is why we need a traffic commission. They can go out and identify these things and become a proactive unit that we need in this city. That's all.
I think that's on the agenda for next week.
When is the HOA forum for the audience?
I think it's March 22nd, I'm going to say, but I could be wrong. to Jonathan? He might know that. When's the HOA forum?
I will find out.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? And I'll take a motion to accept the item.
I'll make a motion.
Second that.
Vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
Item 15, pulled by Councilman Robinson.
Mayor and members of the council, the HOA forum is on March 20th.
I missed it by 2 days.
Agenda item 15, 2018 legislative platform submitted by city manager. And removed from the consent calendar by Councilmember Robinson.
So I just spent the last couple of days up in Sacramento and just landed actually at 4:30 to make it here for the meeting tonight. And I'm constantly frustrated by what I'm seeing up there. So, but it's always important that we have a platform, and we're trying to push the legislature, both the state legislature as well as Congress, on the issues that are of greatest importance to us. One thing that I felt was missing from our platform right now that I believe affects a vast number of residents here in town, and is something that the legislature has been looking at making changes to over the last few years, is Prop 13. And so I'd like to include in the platform, if my colleagues would so support, that we oppose any changes to Prop 13, be it split roll that might involve commercial property or anything that might involve residential property. So that's all I have.
I'd be happy to second that.
I'll third that.
You know, so many of us are into our homes, and my parents all live in the houses that we grew up in. My mom still lives in the house that they bought in 1977 when I first moved into the community of El Toro. And it's because of the Prop 13 that has enabled our parents and our families to still live here, because other than that, taxes are going through the roof. And so that's a great suggestion for that. It's a great safeguard.
Shall we vote on that?
I can, sure. Let's see. The motion moves to include opposition to any changes to Proposition 13, whether it be split roll or property oriented.
So whether it be split roll, so which would affect commercial property, or anything involving residential property as well.
And is the motion for the entire legislative platform as well?
Yes, including that as well.
Okay, vote please.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we're now on to a public hearing. Item 17, Lake Forest Municipal Code Update. I now officially open the public meeting, and we will receive the staff report.
Mayor and members of the council, we have a report from Assistant to the City Manager, Carlo Tomaino.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I have also a PowerPoint presentation that the staff will show you in just a moment. But, you know, from time to time, the City Manager's Office and the City Attorney's Office, we get together with staff, and we look over the code to make sure that it's consistent with federal law, with state law, with county code, and we propose a series of minor amendments to make sure that our code is in compliance, that it's up to date, and that we've addressed any minor implementation issues that show up over the course of time. So as I mentioned, the purpose of the code amendment generally is to ensure that our code remains in compliance and to address any minor issues that may arise. We don't have any substantive policy changes in the code amendment because those are typically discussed by you as separate discussion items because they are important standalone issues, so we set those aside for your consideration. So I'll just briefly run through the changes for you. So in terms of Title II, the only change that we're making there is to ensure that our public meetings are now reflected in the code as starting at 6:30 with a corresponding change to closed session. There are various updates to Title VII, which is a subdivision code, and these are all related to the Subdivision Map Act, which is a California code that provides for regulation of land divisions by the city. And then we also have one single change to Title VIII to update a code reference to the California Building Code. We have a number of changes to Title IX, which is Planning and Zoning. These changes were presented last year to the Planning Commission, and they're now recommending these changes. Largely, these changes are to correct redundancies and outdated references and modifications to streamline our development standards. Staff also recommends reinstating the C1 Local Business District Zone, which was omitted in error in a previous code update and is now just being brought back. In addition, you'll see changes to Title V and Title X. These are to ensure consistency with the county code as it pertains to permits for animal-related businesses and the enforcement of animal laws in the city. The city's contract with Orange County Animal Care requires consistency to ensure that the animal control officers can enforce animal laws in the city, and staff has also attached as part of your agenda report a letter from OCAC further explaining the need for these changes. We also have a couple of changes to Title 11, Peace and Safety. There's actually one change to Title 11, and it's because Public Works found that there were private contractors leaving building materials out on sidewalks and public roads, and that was as a result of ongoing construction. So we just want to make sure the code reflects that that's not an activity that's allowed, and allows some enforcement whenever it's necessary. Title 12, which is Vehicles and Traffic, removes outdated and inconsistent requirements that are no longer reflected in the California Vehicle Code, updates to ensure compliance with ADA, and makes minor amendments to the oversized vehicle ordinance for a clarification so that residents understand that vehicles may only be parked on the street while actually engaging in loading and unloading activities. So this is to assist our community services officers that are out in the field enforcing this ordinance. Then we have a couple of changes. Title 13 is Parks and Recreation, and these changes are here to reflect prohibited activities that could pose a liability to the city. So predominantly the use of boomerangs at a public park, and prohibiting BMX bicycles at the skate park. You can talk to Scott Wasserman about that one if you'd like. Title 14, Vehicles and Traffic. This is a change proposing to enhance our noticing requirements as it pertains to new streets or proposed street name changes to the extent that we have those. And then lastly, with Title 15, similar to the changes involving the Subdivision Map Act and the Building Code, changes to Title 15 update the code to mirror language that is used for enforcement at the State Water Quality Board level. So that concludes my presentation on the Municipal Code update. Our recommendation this evening is that you adopt the proposed ordinance. A second reading would return to you on the 20th, and the changes would be effective 30 days thereafter. In addition, we are proposing notifying our residents through the city's website, through the leaflet, through social media, so that they understand that these changes will be effective and what that means for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any public testimony?
No, sir.
All right, then I will close the public meeting. And council, any comments, questions? Does this mean that it's okay to throw a tomahawk but not a boomerang, as I understand it?
I would recommend against that.
Okay, but it's not specifically prohibited.
Not explicitly.
But boomerangs are.
Boomerangs are. That portion of the code it prohibits throwing all kinds of things. Boomerangs is not explicitly listed. We've had 2 occasions within the last year where we've had to stop individuals from throwing boomerangs at the sports park, which, as you know, is a very high traffic, high activity area.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Move staff recommendation.
Second from Mayor Pro Tem. Please vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, moving right along. Discussion action items number 18, authorization to participate in the Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Review Committee, Local Government Partnership Promotion, submitted by Assistant City Manager.
And we have a brief report for you tonight.
Mr. Mayor, just before the report begins, I just want to state for the record that I'm a member of the South Coast Air Management District. I don't have any personal benefit from this item in any way. It does benefit the city clearly, but I just wanted to state that for the record that I'm a board member.
All right, good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight, staff is recommending that the City Council opt into the Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction MSRC Local Government Partnership Program. The MSRC has already set aside $106,480 for the City of Lake Forest. By opting in, the city will be able to use its funding to help offset the cost of the purchase and installation of the charging stations at the Civic Center, at the new Civic Center. All applications submitted, there are some requirements to submitting and asking for the applications to the MSRC. All applications submitted under the Local Government Partnership Program must include with their application a copy of approved minutes that the board has watched the PowerPoint presentation. Now, this is a PowerPoint presentation sent to us from the MSRC, so it's their exact PowerPoint presentation. We did not put it together. I will read through the PowerPoint presentation. That's just a requirement, and then you can. I'll recommend that you adopt this. And what this will do is reduce the funding for the Civic Center by $106,000, and it's really a no-brainer. But you need to acknowledge receipt of the MSRC in the minutes, authorize the Civic Center electric vehicle charging stations infrastructure as the proposed project, and then appropriate the necessary matching funds, which the matching funds are the impact fees that we will be appropriating sometime in March when we bring you the contracts back for the Civic Center project. So we'll go forward with the presentation. And since I can't even read that over there, I'm going to have to bring out my PowerPoint. So Mobile Source Air Pollution Reduction Review Committee, a.k.a. the MSRC. The MSRC was established by the California legislature in the 1990s. Sole mission is to invest funds to reduce air pollution generated by mobile sources, i.e. cars, trucks, buses, etc. Funds generated by surcharge right now on motor vehicle registrations. The MSRC works closely with the South Coast Air Quality Management District. However, the MSRC is not a regulatory agency. The MSRC invests in clean air projects that support the South Coast Air Quality Management District's objectives and priorities. Significant air quality challenges in our region. There are significant air quality challenges. I'm not an expert on this. I'm just reading the PowerPoint, so if we need some questions answered, I'd either have to bring them back or maybe Council Member Robinson can answer them. According to the South Coast AQMD, South Coast region is extremely non-attainment for ozone. Ozone causes respiratory ailments and is a primary component of smog. Mandatory air pollution reductions are needed now. And you see a graph on here on where they're trying to reach on the reduction into the future. NOx is a precursor to ozone smog formation. From today's levels, NOx emissions need to be reduced by 45% by 2023. That's only a few years away. How do we reduce NOx emissions by 45%? By implementing the clean air measures outlined in the South Coast AQMP's 2016 Air Quality Management Plan. The AQMP is the roadmap for how to meet our mandated clean air obligations. The MSRC is partnering with the South Coast AQMP and wants to partner with you to implement high priority AQMP strategies. So AQMP include traditional regulatory measures and incentive-based strategies. Incentive-based programs will accelerate the introduction of key AQMP technologies, including zero and near zero emission vehicles. The MSRC has reserved incentive funding for your jurisdiction under the Local Government Partnership Program, and that's the $106,000 that they have set aside for the City of Lake Forest. So this is a great opportunity for the City of Lake Forest. We will turn in after the council meeting tonight, and after the council has approved this recommended action, we'll turn in the application, and we'll look forward for the funding to help offset the Civic Center site. If you have any additional questions, we can answer them now. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to the city manager.
That's it. I'll entertain a motion. Well, any questions?
We've talked about it as council, and I think that we've given direction that we're in starting with a permissive left turn. It's just mind-boggling how many times I'm at a left turn and there's no cars coming, and then sure enough, when the cars start coming, my left turn will turn green, allow me to go, with that whole herd having to stop for my. And then, so if we talk about less emissions, wouldn't it be better just to have made people make safe left turns before they stop all that traffic that's oncoming and stop it so many times?
Mayor and members of the council, you did ask us to do a permissive left turn study to present to the Traffic Planning and Traffic Commission, and so I believe that is in progress. We can have a more broader report from our Public Works Director, but that is something you have tasked us with, and it is on our work plan.
All right, thank you. Do we have any comments from the air quality representative?
So some of what was discussed in the presentation here, NOx emissions are a precursor to ozone. NOx emissions, 88% of those in the South Coast Basin are generated from mobile sources. Mobile sources include planes, trains, trucks, automobiles, those sorts of things. There's a number of statewide mandates to try to increase the number of electric vehicles. We have quite a few electric vehicles here in town. We only have a few electric charging stations. We don't have any at public facilities, so I was an advocate for one at our new city hall. I think at some point it would also be great if we could get some funding in the future to put one or two in at the sports park. I know we have some designated for alternative fuel vehicles that don't always have alternative fuel vehicles in those parking spots, but they're labeled as such. And on a very personal level, I've had a full electric up until the end of December. I had a full electric for 3 years. Right now I'm driving a hydrogen and about to get a plug-in hybrid. Encourage people to look at those as options because the technology is rapidly changing. My business partner has a full electric, as do the employees that I have that I provide cars for. I've bought them plug-in hybrids and installed level 2 chargers, which I assume is what we're going to have at City Hall. I've installed those at my business, so I walk the walk, don't just talk the talk. And but I think that I know it's not for everyone. There's still some concerns about range and things like that. But for those that are looking for commuter vehicles, I definitely encourage people to look at alternative fuels, both hydrogen and electric. And then also it's just good to see that we're going to have some public facilities here for charging. For those that may have an electric vehicle, we don't have one at this city, charging stations at this city hall, but in this property complex, just the building kind of catty corner to us over there, there's 4 or 5 charging stations over there, so you can charge when you come to this city hall until our new one's built.
So is that why you walk so far? Are you charging over there?
That is why I walk so far. So, and it's usually, very, very affordable. I forget were we going to have a nominal cost for charging?
We haven't discussed that far yet, but there'll probably be a nominal cost for the charging.
All right, and very typical. So I think that the chargers here, it's $1 an hour for charge, and basically it would give you about, say, 15 to 20% of a battery in an hour. So, and a battery, an hour's worth of, 15 to 20% of a battery is probably somewhere equivalent to about, say, 12 to 18 miles. So it's kind of like you're paying $2 a gallon for gas, or maybe $2.50 in comparison. So it's a very good deal there. But again, I'm excited that we're using these funds for that, and I've also been if you can encourage some of the other cities, I've been doing it through the Orange County Council of Governments and then reaching out to other council members. But this was not a competitive bid to get this funding. This is actually a pro rata share that the city of Lake Forest and every city that make up the cities in LA, Riverside, San Bernardino, and Orange County have designated funds set aside. But as Mr. Neves appropriately put when we were talking on the phone about this, a lot of finance people don't necessarily know that this funding is available within city governments, and they kind of look at it in probably a somewhat suspect way, especially when you're told you have to give a PowerPoint presentation. The first thing an attorney would say is they must be trying to cover something. But it's just funding that's available to every city, so I encourage you to reach out to some of the other cities and let them know this funding is available. As of the end of January, no cities had put this on their agenda yet. We're obviously doing it tonight, so I would expect a number will in the next 7 days or so. But for those that don't, it's a great opportunity. And then for those that may miss the opportunity, I talked with the Vice Chairman of MSRC on Friday, and he confirmed with me that he would extend the period of time where applications could be submitted, because a lot of cities are still trying to understand that no such thing as a free lunch, right? Is what you think. So no such thing as a free $100,000+, and you wonder what strings come attached. There really are no strings other than you have to watch a PowerPoint.
So I'll entertain a motion to
Second.
pocket the $160,000. It's a vote.
That motion carries unanimously. And that was for all of the recommended actions, just clarifying, correct?
Everything that we need to say to get the $106,000.
Wow.
It's easy, simple as that. Oh, yeah, I think so. We're doing something a little different. Actually, we're doing a lot of things differently tonight. One of them is at 8 p.m. we'll have a regular break. And we'll just constantly schedule an 8 o'clock break. But I'm pretty sure we can get through the next one. Item 19, an ordinance amending the Lake Forest Municipal Code relating to the regulation of drones. You remember that came up before, and we got a very good suggestion from Vince. I don't know if he's here. Yeah, he is. To add a little something, and so basically that's coming back, and turn it over to the city manager.
Mayor, members of the council, we have nothing further beyond our submitted report.
We have anyone from the public?
No, sir.
Comments from the council?
Move staff recommendation.
Have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, vote please.
I just have a quick question as we're voting and explaining why I'm voting this way. If I don't vote no, I'm sleeping on the couch tonight. So my husband is an avid drone fan, and it was a difficult decision for me, but yeah, my marriage is first, so it's a no to vote.
Okay. I don't know if you want that in the minutes. Did you vote no?
No.
I was the no vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
No, the
No, it
machine's messed up.
Now your husband needs a name change.
But no, that's not, no.
Yeah, that's right. Or we could have ordered a new board and waited 6 months to get it installed.
Okay, well, that motion carries with Mayor Pro Tem Basil opposed.
Okay, then on to item 20. And then all those items are kind of related. Do we want to take a break now or just go through? No, let's just charge ahead.
Yeah, just one by one.
One by one, yeah. Item number 20, evaluation of structure and operation of the city council. Item A is options to adjust city council compensation, submitted by the city attorney.
All right. Good evening again, Mayor and members of the City Council. At the last meeting, you provided some direction to the council or to the staff to bring back a review of the structure and operation of the City Council. And in response to the City Council's direction, what we've done is prepared a cover report with 6 sub-items that talk about council compensation, position and selection of the mayor, campaign contributions, code of ethics, appointment of commissioners, and the process to fill a city council vacancy. This evening, what we're going to do is that Mal and I are going to cover these topics as part of brief presentations for each of these items. At the conclusion of each presentation, we were going to ask the council to deliberate on the issue, ask questions, take action, and at the end of the presentation, we'll summarize your direction. So with that, Mal is going to introduce this first item, which is City Council compensation.
Mr. Mayor, council members, there are, as Carlo noted, detailed staff reports in your agenda packet. I will try to keep this as brief as possible. Council compensation is dictated by state law. Limits are set by state law, and they can be adjusted locally, jurisdiction by jurisdiction. The state law limits are based on population. Lake Forest is in a population range based on Government Code Section 36516A2C, which limits us to a max of $1,056 per month. Now, under state law, the compensation can be increased by a maximum of 5% every year, but that has to be an affirmative action by the council to increase compensation. It can't be an automatic increase. The council, however, adopted a policy many years ago setting its compensation and allowing for increases in even-numbered election years tied to the cumulative CPI for the previous 2 years. Again, any compensation increases would have had to have been done proactively by the council at the budget adoption. The last increase was in 2008. The current council compensation is $704 per month. The options the council has before it tonight based on, that is hard to see, isn't it? Based on state law and the council policy is to keep the council compensation policy as is, which I believe that's transposed at $745 per month, amend the current council policy and adopt an ordinance allowing for the 5% increases per year since the last election, which would take us to around $1,000 per month, or submit this question to the electorate via ballot measure, at which point the electorate could set compensation for the council at any amount. One final note is that when the council appoints a mayor and mayor pro tem, all council members are compensated equally. If the mayor is directly elected, the mayor can have a higher compensation amount than the rest of the council. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any question, and this is within the council's discretion.
Council have any questions before we go to public comments? Any comments?
No, sir.
Oh, terrific. Our first IM.
I'm just going to read it aloud.
Okay.
From Mark F. Murphy. Speaking about item 20C. Would now be the appropriate time for this?
No, we're on 20A. Or 20A. So, okay. Yeah, question or comment?
It's for the attorney, I guess. You said it could go before the public for in a ballot measure. How would they? It's kind of a broad brush. Some might vote for 0. Some might vote for 2,000 or 3,000. How would that be defined?
Yeah, it's a great question. Mr. Mayor, Council, the council would be responsible for drafting a proposed ballot measure and ordinance to then be voted on by the electorate. So council would essentially propose a question to the electorate, and that would likely be a set amount. They would then vote on that.
If I understand correctly, that would be if we were to try to put a ballot measure ourselves in place. But
That's correct.
Any resident could choose to do that and select dollar amounts.
Ab-
0,
It can be done by the
thousands,
council
and they'd have
or
to
by
get-
the electorate.
And they'd have to get the requisite number of signatures to get that on the ballot as a ballot measure.
That's correct.
Okay, and is that 20% or 15%? Are you aware of what the percentage is?
The percentages differ based on special election versus general election. I can get that information for you and get you an answer.
Okay, all right.
It's 10 or 15 typically based on the election that's being requested.
Yeah. Okay. I've stated on a number of occasions that I think that issues that affect the council, the residents are my boss. You're the ones that elect me. You're the ones that should determine, in my mind, how long my term limits are. Even though we have enacted term limits, I'm limiting myself to less than what our term limits are because I'm not going to run again. And I never had a problem with the 8 years, but some wanted 12, so I was okay with that. But it's something I really wish that the residents could have done. An earlier comment was made about district elections, and I've had a few conversations with the mayor about just how we craft motions sometimes and how we go about trying to accomplish certain things, and when they're binary decisions. So, for instance, I want to use this room for Meals on Wheels. When I don't like that room doesn't mean that I don't support Meals on Wheels, but I just didn't support that room when it would be more, open-ended. Then there'd be, a better discussion with respect to districts. If someone said, hey, I'd really like to put this on the ballot, I'd be much more supportive of that than say, oh, the council is going to determine districts, or the council is going to determine whether or not we have an elected mayor, or, all of these things. Residents may not have been aware of the minutia of every detail, but when we voted to incorporate as a city, they were voting on all of these things. That's what the city incorporation documents were all about, and there were lots of community meetings about should we have at-large or should we have districts. How should we compensate? Should there be term limits? All those sorts of things. And those discussions didn't happen. They didn't result in votes from the residents, but those who were active and involved in that incorporation had the opportunity at that time to make those decisions. I think changing them, in my mind, is best done at the voter level. And I understand that in some cases it might seem a little silly because the cost of putting an item on the ballot might be a little bit more expensive than the actual compensation change that would occur. But again, the residents are my boss. They're the ones that should determine whether I get paid 0 or whether I get paid $2,000 or $3,000, whether I get an increase or not. And so that's the direction that I'm leaning at this point. Short of that, we've had a council policy in place for a long time, and so tonight. If we were to amend the current city council policy and then bring ourselves up to the maximum that state law allows, and being that there's very little public comment, I'm not really sure. We're always talking about how communicative we are to residents when we're talking about parking issues, or we're talking about things that might affect a park, things like that. I'm not sure that enough residents are aware, being that we have no public comment other than, there's not even anybody on social media here trying to comment, but I have to imagine that a lot of people have a perspective. And, some of them might be very supportive of it. Some of them might think it should be 0. And, this was something that I struggled with, and I've had to sleep on the couch a few times myself. As I've told my wife, the first 3 or 4 months, similar to former council member Nick, I didn't accept any pay at all. And my wife was on me quite a bit, and she said, at the very least, take it and donate it to some charitable organizations here in town. And so that's what I've done, supporting the Boys and Girls Club, supporting the Veterans Committee, the law enforcement battalion that Jim Rosenberg has done such a beautiful job of putting together here in town. Number of El Toro High School things, all that kind of stuff. And, that's how I've chosen to do it. I understand that that's not the choice that everybody's going to make, but for that reason, I mean, I would be supportive of zero. I always have been. I've told former Councilmember Nick that on a number of occasions, that, I was supportive of what he was doing. But, with all that said, I mean, I'm just very uneasy about increasing it, and definitely to the maximum. So that's kind of my position at this point.
Just to comment on some of the things you've said, we're going to have probably a term limits on the ballot and districts on the ballot. That's at least two things we're putting on the ballot. And my experience is, for myself, and I understand from other people, the more things that are on the ballot, the people begin to phase out. They don't want to read that much about government. So I'd be afraid, and I don't know how many other things we're going to put on the ballot. So I'd be afraid of loading the ballot up. That being said, we're one of the least compensated councils in Orange County. And for years I tried to recruit people to run for city council. And people had lots of reasons why they didn't want to run, but the most common one was when I told them how much they get paid, $700 a month. It was like, you got to be kidding me. So I think by raising it, not that we're raising it that much, and it's less than $300 for 5 people, that's less than $15,000 in a year. So the figure, we spend more for that on cookies and coffee. So the amount doesn't disturb me. I'm worried about putting it on the ballot that we don't water down the effectiveness of the other ballot measures. And I'm also I'd like to make it more attractive to people. And again, not that $1,000 a month is, on an hourly basis, I'm making about $3 an hour. Now, some people might say that's more than he's worth, but that the reality is there are lots of people out there who do look at that amount and say, gee, that's too much. If I could increase it to more, I would increase it to more to attract people, but that's the maximum we can increase it. So those are my thoughts on the matter.
I respectfully disagree with you a little bit, Mayor. I'm kind of like Councilman Robinson is. Hopefully nobody runs for this job for the money. There should not be any money in it. I frankly didn't know what it paid when I ran for it, and I don't think that giving more money attracts better candidates necessarily. I think there are many other problems involved with that. Frankly, running for the city of Lake Forest as a whole, as you know, for 80,000 people, 40,000 registered voters, and it's only 17 square miles, but out where Mayor Pro Tem lives, those are very tough square miles out there when you're trying to climb those hills, and that can be discouraging to anybody. But I don't think that giving more money will attract better candidates. I think the only way to do that is make this a more responsive, as we are, make the city a better place you want to serve it. And I think I didn't even know what the salary was when I sought this position, and I feel that way still. Because I want to be on the dais, I want to help make the city a better place than what it is, which is a challenge.
Could you clarify what was your position, Councilman Cagley? Do you want to put that on the ballot? Was that your position?
Yes, that would be my position.
Just real briefly, just to respond, and not that I'm trying to go back and forth in any way, but just another thought that has been percolating for a while with respect to this issue. I look around at the number of people that serve in this community. My son's Boy Scout leaders, HOA, presidents and board members, people with Little League AYSO, Soroptimists, the Kiwanis Club, Chamber of Commerce. They're all they're doing it voluntarily, right? And they're spending enormous amounts of time and energy, maybe more than some of us, maybe less, depending on how many hours we're putting in. So it's the dollar per hour part has just never resonated with me for that specific reason, because when you want to serve, you want to make an impact, that's what it's all about. You spend countless hours, on a soccer field or helping young boys and girls get badges, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, and you just don't think about the compensation part in any way. So I agree with the comments that Colonel Cagley made, that it's never should be about the money, and I don't really feel like it is with any of us. But I don't think that should be what attracts people to this. Now, if this was a full-time position, I would have a different perspective, clearly, because you're having to give up, your livelihood. But, what we're required to do is to study the material, show up to the 2 meetings, and then, those are the requirements, basically. Everything else is important for us to do, but not a requirement of the job. When we get out and meet one-on-one with residents, we go to different meetings. We communicate via email, phone calls. Some of you have office hours. Some, we just engage with people in the community. Those are things that we choose to do above and beyond what the requirements are for the position. And those are all very laudable things, but, just the dollar per hour part's never resonated with me. So,
All right, so I'll take that as a motion then not to do a raise. Is that just so we can move it along?
It's been mentioned and put it on the ballot. Let the people.
Well, I'll start. I'll start with the motion not to do a pay increase, and then we'll see where that goes.
Okay. So vote. Well, do we have a second? I'm assuming
Second.
You'll second that. Okay. So the motion is no pay increase. Vote, please.
That motion fails with, no, mine
was a yes, so I think those are, it's the outcome's probably the same,
Sorry.
but I think but.
We'll do a roll call vote.
Okay, sounds good.
Let the machine break that again.
Councilmember Cagley?
So.
Sorry.
No raise?
No pay increase.
I vote yes.
Councilmember Robinson?
Aye.
Councilmember Voight?
I'm abstaining.
Mayor Pro Tem Basil?
No.
Mayor Gardner?
No.
That motion fails with Mayor Gardner, Mayor Pro Tem Basil opposed, and Councilmember Voight.
Okay, then do you want to do your second?
I'll make a motion that we place a ballot initiative on the November 2018 ballot for voters to decide. And I don't know. Now I guess I need to include in my motion the dollar amount, because otherwise we're just going to have to bring this up again. So I guess I'll start with following the current city council policy, which would bring it up to the $754, the first item on there. So that's my motion, that we put that on the ballot to increase it to $754 a month. If that fails, we'll look.
Can I make a counter? If we're going to put it on the ballot for the voters to decide, I think it would be, in my opinion, appropriate to set it to California standard. So that would be $1,000.56. It doesn't have to be that high, but $754 or $744, whatever it is, a $40 increase doesn't seem to make sense to put that before the voters. That's an extremely big waste of money for $40 a month.
I understand. Like I said, it's not the dollar amount for me. It's the ideological part to it. But I mean, if there's no second to my motion, then that's a substitute motion, I guess.
All right, is there a second for Mayor Pro Tem's motion? Just to put it on the ballot with the figure 1056.
How much?
1056, $1,056.
And that's according to the since last time.
That's the state law maximum, and the motion would be to put it on the ballot for the electorate to decide.
I'll second that motion with a friendly amendment that if we're taking it to the voters, that we add health benefits, because Mission Viejo, Irvine, Rancho Santa Margarita, Laguna Hills, Aliso Viejo all include health benefits with their stipend. So I got a staff report on that. So if you take a friendly amendment, that if we take it to the voters.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I mean, as long as the health benefits, it's an optional thing. We don't have to take them.
Hold on, wait. Wasn't that Councilman Robinson's?
No, his died for failure of a second. She has now first, and you are second with an amendment.
Okay, all right.
And you accept the amendment?
Yes.
Okay. So the motion is to put it on the ballot for 1056 plus health benefits. And do you think those should be specified, like there's a cost to that, health benefits?
In conjunction with our neighboring cities.
Mr. Mayor, Council, we will have to come back to the council with a draft ordinance and ballot
And then we
initiative,
can see
and
it
define
at
that
the
further
cost.
at that point.
Okay. All right, let's vote.
We're going to have to do a roll call, yes. Okay.
Okay.
Councilmember Cagley?
I'm going to abstain.
Councilmember Robinson?
No.
Councilmember Voight?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Basil?
Yes.
Mayor Gardner?
Yes.
That motion carries. Okay, I'm sorry, with Councilmember Robinson opposed and Councilmember Cagley abstained.
Okay, we've kind of gone 10 minutes over our break, so we'll take a 5 to 10 minute break, and let's be back here no later than 8:20. ready to start.
Seriously discussing Prop 13 changes that are exactly right now?
Yeah, they've been talking about trying to break off commercial property.
They've been talking about that for a while.
John Morlock's
Can we just delete 1 through 6?
stuff.
But every single year, so I just think it's good to keep it on the platform. So. Eventually, they'll go at it hard. So.
Oh, no, he was probably best.
People aren't hanging out. It's ridiculous. It's the quickest way to...
Oh, I think it was
Tell the Mayor Pro Tem to quit texting.
Well, it depends on how far we get. We'd have to be unanimous in any votes.
Well, I know. We can start the discussion.
I know, I'm kidding.
I realize we're missing 2 people, but we have 3 here, so let's commence. Okay. Item B, selection of mayor.
Good evening again, Mayor and members of the City Council. So this next item is also at your request. You asked us to come back with an item to discuss the position and selection of the mayor. So as you know, the City Council, under the council manager form of government, the position of mayor holds the same level of authority as the rest of the council, with some notable exceptions and some additional functions. For example, as listed here, the mayor's duties is defined in the code. The mayor can call a special meeting, an emergency meeting, enforces a rule of conduct at meetings, presides over the meetings, executes certain ordinances and resolutions and contracts, and then also has ceremonial functions involving mostly representing the city at special events. In terms of the selection of the mayor, you all know how this works very well, but I'll explain it for everyone here. So the mayor is nominated, the mayor pro tem, in December typically, nominated for the ensuing year, and there's a vote of the council. The majority of the city council decides who the mayor and the mayor pro tem are going to be for the balance of the year, which is a very common practice in many cities. As part of our analysis, we also decided to include some discussion on a directly elected mayor. With the directly elected mayor, there's the option for a ballot initiative, if you so would like to do this. The voters would decide on 3 essential issues: whether to have a directly elected mayor, the term of office, and then, of course, they would elect the mayor from the possible candidates. The City Council may elect to change the process to select the mayor if so desired. Consequently, any further clarification or direction is at your discretion. This concludes my brief presentation, and we're here to answer questions. Thank you.
We have any comments?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm going to take off the citywide mayor from your list, because that's coming up later when we talk about the ballot measures. So there's no point in bringing it on now, and I want to limit the discussion to the way in which the mayor is selected, and the main consideration there is that to allow anybody who's elected to have the opportunity of being a mayor. What happened in the past in the city, some people were mayors like for 10 years, and people who served an equal amount of time were mayors only once, and they were frozen out. And in one case, in the case of Councilman Nick, he never even got the chance to be a mayor. So I'm looking at a motion that goes something like this: that any person elected to the office of council has the right to serve as a mayor. Each year during the appointment process, the elected official who has not yet served and who has the most seniority shall be offered the position. If he or she declines, the position goes to the next longest serving official who has not yet been mayor. So in that way it assures that somebody, if the people elected you mayor, if people elected you to the council, at some point or another you got a turn.
I agree with that. If you're submitting your comments as far as part of your motion, then I would just suggest we scratch out the word he/she and change that to council member, only because of I think that there are some people that might be concerned with gender identity. I want to take that out just in case.
Is
And
there
also,
something besides he or she that I wasn't aware of?
well, not up here, but, in the future, there could be. So
Oh, all right.
I don't want to offend any future possible candidates. The other thing was, you hadn't mentioned in your motion, but in the first year of office, newly elected member shall not be appointed as mayor. I think that would be wise because, the first year in office, you're still trying to figure out what you're doing, and having you as mayor may not be a good thing. So have a new person as mayor may not be good. So that's my amendment to your proposal.
Yeah, I'll accept that. Comments, discussion?
Yeah, I just want to try to define a couple things. First of all, just piggybacking off of that last conversation there, in the past, I've been supportive of that particular clause in the first year of office. A newly elected member shouldn't be appointed as mayor. But as we potentially look at electing a mayor, it's highly probable that at some point someone could run and win an elected mayor position without ever having been a council member. So, for that reason, it's not a deal breaker for me, but I don't have as much of a problem with it as I did when I first came on. And when I first came on, that's when I supported it, because I said, wow, I'm coming in new to this. I'm not sure I'm ready to do it. So maybe, everyone else is in the same boat, but there's probably some people who are much brighter than me who can come in and hit the ground running. So with that said, the only piece of clarification that I wanted was just on the seniority part. And you brought up one former council member that the ones that I'm aware of that haven't been mayor in the past would be, Councilmember Bass, Councilmember Nick, and then
Marcia Rudolph?
No,
No,
Marcia
she got it
Rudolph
once.
was mayor. Most likely, Councilmember Tim Link. I don't think he served as mayor, and so my understanding is that all three still live in town, but I don't know for sure. But and so if they were to come back to the council, is the seniority? Does it start from they're new, or I just want to define that now because it could be a problem in the future on how you're defining seniority right now. Because if it's left ambiguous, my guess would be that it starts with the new term, and if that's not what we want, then I don't want people being critical of how the staff might interpret that. So
Well, I think the term newly elected, wouldn't that kind of clarify it? I mean, if somebody's had previous experience on the council, they're not technically newly elected because they've
Sounds
been
good.
here before. So
okay.
And how about in that where it says, in the first year of office, a newly elected member, if we added under the district system? In that way, when we move to citywide, it wouldn't apply. But if we stay in the district system, it does apply.
Yeah, I think that would probably get a little tricky because then, like Mayor Pro Tem Basil wouldn't technically have been elected during the district system, so then that could be interpreted the wrong way. I'm just how people could parse words, So
I don't know if that's necessary to differentiate that, because if we do end up going,
we could change it.
Yeah, we can always change it.
Yeah. So,
Point of clarification. As we rotate through this, obviously, Mayor Gardner's here now, and presumably Mayor Pro Tem Basil takes over next year. So we'll all rotate through. This will be a rotation process, and so I think we should use the word rotation in there as you rotate through the council.
Okay, where would you use that word?
The rotation process, appointment rotation process.
Oh, okay.
The newly elected official.
Or an appointment rotation process. Yeah, this doesn't stop someone, so at some point, everybody could have served, so it doesn't stop somebody from serving again.
Sure.
And it doesn't force somebody, so you would be the next in line, but doesn't force you to serve. So if you didn't want to.
Well,
Twice I didn't want to, so I asked not to serve.
And she graciously allowed you to jump over her this year.
Yeah,
so
she's a sweetie.
yeah. So,
lastly, and this might get into some of the other things that one of the other items that we're going to discuss tonight, but would you foresee any reason why someone wouldn't be deserving of this? So, for instance, and again, I'm not referring to anything that's happened in the past in any way. I'm really looking at what are those anomaly kind of situations. But if someone were, for instance, being charged with a felony, which has never happened to my knowledge here. We've had a couple council members that have been charged with misdemeanors while they were on the council, but is there anything from kind of a public appearance standpoint where we might want to skip over that rotation, and then what would that require? Would it require like a 4-1 vote where it would have to be everyone except that one member? I just want to kind of talk through this since we're doing it right now. And if there is none, that's all right, but I just want to make sure we're having that discussion.
Let's ask the city attorney, if you were convicted of a felony, could you still stay on the city council?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I actually don't know that answer. I can look that up right now and hopefully get an answer in the next 10 minutes or so for you.
I think there's a difference between being charged and being convicted.
Yeah, and like I said, to my knowledge, no one's ever been convicted of a felony or charged of a felony, or charged with a felony, and there have been some misdemeanors. There have been probably plenty of infractions with speeding tickets and things of that nature. But I'm talking about things that are fairly egregious at the felony level. So
you want some kind of a system, for example, where 4 people could veto. It was her turn next, and she did something horrible, and then 4 people could veto the rotation?
What I'm getting at is, does anyone else feel that there would be any reason why there shouldn't be a rotation? If I'm the only one here, then I'm happy to shut up and let everyone vote. I'm just trying to be thorough.
No, I actually feel that we are held to a high standard because the residents of Lake Forest expect that out of us, and we have leadership principles. We're going to be talking about a code of ethics. But the fact is, the leadership principles say that we're supposed to refrain from illegal. So I think even being charged with a misdemeanor, I think that there are charges, or I think it just brings a shadow upon the council if there's charges pending even.
I can appreciate where you're coming from, and everyone has their own opinion. I'm kind of sticking with felonies, and again, I don't think that that's ever occurred, here in Lake Forest. So it's just kind of, if there's something that's so egregious, then how would we want to respond in that case? And again, if I'm the only one, happy to shut up.
Well, so your amendment would be accept someone who's been convicted of a felony. This applies unless someone has been convicted of a felony.
Yeah, I would probably take it to charged, and I might not be thinking through all of this, but I'm just kind of, that's a pretty egregious act. When they've been charged with something, they haven't been convicted yet, but clearly we can't remove them from the council. Only, the state could do that. I'm guessing, or the district attorney or something like that. But I'm just thinking that might not be someone who's in the midst of going to trial over a felony that we want representing the city as our ceremonial head. But I'm speaking of, again, very egregious things, not misdemeanors. And, those have occurred in the past, and some may have said, hey, if you had a DUI, which, typically is going to be a misdemeanor, would be my understanding. Is that fair to say, Mr. City Attorney? That a lot of people would say, oh, they shouldn't be there. I'm not even going to that extent. I'm just saying something even more egregious than that. So.
Well, that makes an interesting point, because we're only talking about an appointment as mayor, so that means their felony would have to have occurred within that small window of us appointing them. So maybe it should be more broad, in that if someone is serving as mayor and they are convicted of a felony, that they should step down and let the pro tem be the mayor. So as far as visibility and press, you don't want the press picking that up. The mayor of Lake Forest did XYZ, and so that may be a discussion for the mayorship in general. That
as an example, and I think that anything that we do here, we also might want to apply to our commissions. We had a commissioner who was charged with a very egregious act who resigned before we all found out about it. But that's not someone who I would want serving as the chairman of a commission that we had. It was very disheartening to see them even mentioned as former Lake Forest Planning Commissioner or Lake Forest Planning Commissioner at the time. That was, my heart sunk when I saw that, because that reflects very poorly on the city. And so someone who's in a role of honor, basically, right? It's that's where my concern is. But again, I'm just sticking to the most egregious, not to the
So how about on line 4 where it says, "and who has the most seniority," we add in, "and not being charged with a felony"?
That would be good enough for me.
Okay. And then add at the end, "if charged with a felony during," I was going to say his or her, "during the mayor's term, the mayor will relinquish their position."
Yeah, and I'm good with it just the way it is there, but if anyone's uncomfortable with it and would require that be a 4-1 vote or better, I'd be supportive of that.
No, I think, personally, I think you're right. You really don't want, it's in the newspapers, the mayor is charged with it. Just, you would hope the person, as in the other case, would have the good sense to step down, but maybe not. In this way, we don't have to worry about it. So I think it's a good cap.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
You have a second.
Okay. And did you get it all, Clerk? City Clerk?
Yes, we're going to add to line 4, I'm sorry, the elected official who has not yet served and not charged with a felony. And then at the end, we will add, if charged with a felony during the term, the mayor will relinquish the title of mayor.
I think position might be better. Position of mayor.
So changed.
Okay, and it's the appointment rotation process, right? On line 3.
On line 3.
Oh. Yes, sir, I have that.
You'd think it would be a no-brainer, but since we had to add boomerang in, right? I just figure, well, maybe we should add everything in.
Okay, let's vote.
Mr. Mayor, Council, in case you're interested, Government Code Section 1770 reads as follows. An office becomes vacant on the happening of any of the following events before the expiration of the term. And subdivision H reads, his or her conviction of a felony or of any offense involving a violation of his or her official duties. And this is effective when trial court judgment is entered. So if you are a felon, we will not see you on the council any longer.
No, but Councilman Robinson's a little more restrictive in the sense just charged.
That's charged, and because the mayoral position is a ceremonial position, it's the equivalent of a censure vote, if you will.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item number C, campaign contributions. Do we have a report?
We do, Mr. Mayor, Council. This is an item that is buttressed by a very complex area of law. I've endeavored in the staff report, which can be seen as a cure for insomnia, to go through as much of that as possible while not getting too far into the weeds. Suffice it to say that campaign finance regulations are impacted and regulated generally by two bodies of law in California. The first is the Political Reform Act and the Fair Political Practices Commission, which regulate campaign finances at the state level and at the local level. The second is the Constitution, and specifically the First Amendment. As you're aware, campaign finance is deemed protected First Amendment speech by the Constitution. There are myriad court cases, including many U.S. Supreme Court cases that deal with these issues. I don't want to get too far into those details. If you have questions about those details, I'm happy to answer them. The important principles to understand are that In California, the Political Reform Act expressly states that campaign contributions do not constitute a disqualifying conflict of interest under FPPC regulations. The U.S. Constitution very strictly protects the ability of individuals and corporations. That was confirmed about 7 years ago. Protects their ability to contribute to campaigns. The way that I have put together these brief slides is by discussing what's black and what's white. There are things that we know we cannot regulate. There are things that we know we can regulate. Then discussing what's maybe dark gray and what's light gray, because there are some things that haven't been tested by the courts specifically that we feel probably would, if tested, would end badly for us, and some that if tested would end well for us. So what I want to do is go through what we know that we cannot do, and then end with what we can do. So starting with the bullet points, a city may not. We know that we may not impose limits on campaign contributions to ballot measures. That's to be differentiated from candidates. We know that we cannot impose limits on campaign expenditures. Now that's different from contributions. This refers to how much you as an individual or as a campaign can spend on your own campaign. And finally, we know that we cannot regulate in any way independent committees and independent expenditures. This is PACs, for example. And that was confirmed recently by the U.S. Supreme Court in the Citizens United case. Moving from what we know we cannot do to kind of the dark gray. It is unclear whether cities may require disqualification from matters involving individuals or entities who have contributed to a campaign. Now, I say that's unclear because it hasn't been tested in California at the general law city level. To my knowledge, nobody has ever attempted this. Now, as I stated previously, the FPPC regulations make it clear that campaign contributions do not give rise to a conflict. And there are two cases, a California Supreme Court case and a California Appellate Court case, that appear to stand for the proposition that a city cannot do this. But again, I want to emphasize this hasn't been tested in California, and the level of constitutional scrutiny that would be applied is a little bit lower than the highest form of scrutiny, which could give us some wiggle. But again, this is in the dark gray area. Moving to the next slide, and this takes us to the white, what we know we can do, and kind of the light gray, what we probably can do. So we know that we can impose limits on candidate campaign contributions. So this is the amount that any individual or entity can contribute to a candidate or his or her directly controlled committee. And we know that we can impose additional disclosure requirements, which we'll discuss in further detail on the last slide. And finally, a city probably can adopt what I'm calling a focused ban on contributions from contractors. I say probably because that, again, has not been tested in California. There's at least one general law city, Malibu, that has adopted an ordinance that does this. And that ordinance, as I'll discuss at the next slide, which we can go to, hasn't been tested but is patterned almost exactly on an ordinance at the federal level, which has been tested by the U.S. Supreme Court. So, on this slide we have examples from the list of things that we know we can do and from that light gray area. So the city can adopt an ordinance that limits direct campaign contribution amounts. In your written staff report, there's a table that shows all the cities in Orange County that have limits. Those limits range from $250 in any election cycle in Laguna Woods up to $2,000 in Anaheim, and everything in between. The majority, I shouldn't say majority, but 5 cities are at 500. An additional 2 are just over 5 and just under 5. And again, this would apply only to direct contributions. It could not apply to independent expenditures. The council can also explore disclosure requirements. This is where the council can get a little bit creative. 2 examples that are noted are Aliso Viejo and Indian Wells. What these cities do is they require what I'll call real-time disclosure. As you know, campaign contributions are only reported in a non-campaign season every 6 months. So an entity or individual coming before the council could make a contribution just a few weeks before that meeting. It never shows up. The council votes, and no one's the wiser. What Aliso Viejo and Indian Wells do is require that every contractor going before the council and has to report whether they have given any contributions, and the council member also has to make that same report. In Indian Wells, the report is for any contributions aggregating $99 over the past 4 years. In Aliso Viejo, it is for any contribution at any amount at all. And the idea here is just to bring these contributions to light of day. This, importantly, does not lead to recusal for the reasons that I noted previously. Finally, the focused contractor contribution ban. The City of Malibu ordinance is patterned after the federal ordinance that was tested in the Wagner versus FEC Supreme Court case. And what this ordinance does is bans all contributions from a contractor during what's called the contracting period, and that begins at the earlier of the RFP reply or the negotiation of the contract, and ends at the conclusion of the contract. So essentially, any contractor doing business with the city cannot, during that period, make any contributions to a candidate within the city. Again, this hasn't been tested in California, but I'm fairly confident this could work based on the Wagner case. The Malibu ordinance has been in place for quite some time, hasn't been challenged. And importantly, in the Wagner case, the Supreme Court cites to over 20 state statutes that are very similar to what Malibu has done and the federal government has done. So those are the options that we know we can do. I'm happy to answer any questions about the law in this area or possible approaches the council wants to take. And that concludes my presentation.
Any public comment?
No, sir.
Mayor, we do have one from Facebook.
Okay, and how are we going to handle that?
I will read it verbatim.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Mark F. Murphy, in the summary of the campaign contributions agenda report prepared by the city manager, it was reported that the Political Reform Act excludes campaign contributions from the list of disqualifying, quote, financial interests, end quote, and that independent committees are not subject to the, quote, appearance of corruption, end quote, via campaign contributions. If this is the case, can Mayor Gardner explain why he publicly wrote in numerous articles against his fellow council members that contradicts the city manager's report, and why did Mayor Gardner claim that donations to an independent committee violated the existing Lake Forest ethics clause? That's the end of the comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions from council?
We've talked about this before, so I just want to have you record. But with respect to public works contracts where we're supposed to accept the lowest responsive bid, what would happen in that case if we were to try to preclude a contractor who would fall into that category? Is that a dark gray area? So they end up being the lowest bidder, and so now we're trying to determine whether they're responsive and responsible, and we would potentially reject their bid because maybe they gave someone a $250 contribution or $99 or whatever dollar amount we picked, and it would be using this analogy, which could happen at some point. We could have someone second bidder who was $50,000 more, but which happens quite frequently. But we would basically shoot ourselves in the foot with it over this issue. But I'm just curious, can we do that? Because that's a state requirement, right, with respect to public work contracts.
Sure. So to answer your direct question, can we do that? A typical lawyer answer is it's unclear because this hasn't been tested. But what is interesting to note is that the Wagner case and the state court cases that are some of the Wagner case, they expressly state that the reason for this contribution ban is to avoid quid pro quo arrangements, where a contractor gives money in exchange for getting the contract, where you have a lowest responsive responsible bidder that is much less of a danger. But what's interesting is that these statutes that have been upheld, both federally and at the state level, have that ban continued throughout the life of the contract. And so that would apply regardless of whether it's a low bid contract or not. But again, the answer is it's completely unclear because that hasn't been addressed by the courts.
Okay, and that was just really my question, because I know that we're required in those cases to select the lowest bidder.
That's correct.
And we really don't have any discretion based on state law unless we can identify in very specific terms why they're not responsive or responsible.
And they would have to get to the responsiveness issue.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right, well...
I do have some comments, but I didn't have any questions.
No, I'm sorry.
Questions? Yeah, I appreciate it. My position really hasn't changed since the last time we've talked about this. I really don't have a problem with limits in any way. My concern is that in politics, whether you're at the federal level or you're at the local level, those that want to get their candidates into office are going to find a way to spend money to help make that happen. And they could spend money by funding volunteers going door to door. They could spend money sending out mail for you through the independent expenditures and PACs. And my concern is that any types of limits, they actually just push it that direction where it becomes more in the dark. I would rather that we have no limits like we have right now, but I'm very supportive of you have to disclose every single time in real time when you're voting on something who's supported you and not. And in some ways people consider that to maybe be public shaming, or at least people have to own up to who's supporting them, whatever it might be. But then it becomes very clear when it's being funneled through independent expenditures and PACs and things like that. None of us know where that money comes from. We can't know for sure because those PACs or independent expenditures committees will support sometimes dozens or hundreds of candidates, and you can't tell where all the money came from that went from one source to another. You can make assumptions clearly, but you can't know for sure. And so, I'd like to see it as transparent as it possibly can. I mean, I would be fine with having no limits, but our 460s in the staff report every single meeting that we have, so that people can look at all of our campaign contributions in real time, and we have to disclose them. That way it's very clear to everyone, what's going on. They're all out in public. I mean, we can say they're online and they're easy to access, which they are, but how many people go onto our website to go look at who contributed to each one of us, whatever dollar amount. I doubt that happens in any significant degree. You can probably look at page hits from our website or something like that, but I'm guessing that they're not the most commonly hit pages. So, for me, it's how can it be as transparent as it possibly can be, and I don't have a problem with limits. I think as soon as there are limits, it's just going to push it into the dark through independent expenditures and PACs.
I would agree with that, and I think that we all want to engage more of the public in the opportunity to run for city council. And I think that with us putting limits, it excludes people from actually going out and seeking support of their friends, families, and businesses that agree with what their platform is, whether it be the animal rights people or the tree people or the immigration people or the gun people or the pro-life people or the pro-choice people. The fact is that I think that when we limit the transparency or make the limits, I think that they funnel it through such political independent expenditure committees, which will hide it from all of us. So I think that I like the idea of it being transparent, and actually when a contractor comes, that they put it on there, that we disclose it all, and it's before everybody. So that way it's known, because we're limiting the amount of everyday people in Lake Forest to run for city council. If we limit contributions to them, you're only allowing the rich to run. I think it's a bad precedent, and I think that what we've had here in Lake Forest for so many years was $20,000-$30,000 campaigns, and now they're up to $200,000 campaigns. And so I think that we're excluding the majority of Lake Forest residents.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Just kind of a thought about independent expenditures. I think, I've heard it said several times that it brings donations into the dark, but there's a big difference between getting a check for $200 from company XYZ being handed directly to a candidate as opposed to expenditures made on their behalf, which the candidates never see, and so they don't really know what kind of influence that is. And yes, there will be, special interest groups that will be donating to particular candidates, but I do believe that there is a big difference, because if it were me and I was receiving money directly from someone, I think I would be more influenced by their donation, because I'm physically receiving it as opposed to them spending it peripherally and me not being as aware. So putting it in the dark, I don't think that it necessarily does. I just think that it makes the candidate less beholden to the people that are spending it on their behalf, because they don't really know who's doing the spending.
Any other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Voight, I appreciate what you're saying, but I also think, as I said in my opening statement at the start of this meeting, that going to single-member districts will lower the cost of these campaigns. Will mean much less money.
I agree.
Don't have to cover the entire city. What Mr. Robinson said is absolutely correct. We have no control over what a PAC does for anybody, either for us or against us. Those PACs are out there uncontrolled. We can't control them. I think I'm correct on that, aren't I?
Right.
And I had some issues about, and Mr. Hamilton talked about that too, and as you just said it also, only the rich can run if we don't have campaign contributions. And I said, we rail against campaign contributions. I received a few this election cycle, none from corporations, none from any PAC I'm aware of. They were made as, they could have been doing things on the back that I didn't know about. But again, one of the good things about a single-member district is the fact there's going to be less money involved, because there will be less requirements. You're going to have 15,000 voters to appeal to instead of 40,000 or somewhere in that range, and a lot easier to reach. So it's a difficult issue. If we could limit PACs, I'd be all for it. We can't do that by law.
And I agree with you. I think that we can set limits on contributions from personal and from businesses, and just put campaign limits on. I think that it's something that can be declared, yet it allows your friends, your families to support you if you so choose. So I think that campaign limits aren't a bad thing. I think that many of the cities have gone that way. So, but the fact is, disclosing 460s are required by the state, and I think that as you get closer to elections, you have stipulations, and so there's things that we can do to tighten our stipulations up, but without excluding them completely. So
I think Santa Ana, and I might be wrong about this, but I think that they have a regulation that if you receive more than $250 from a contractor doing business with the city, you cannot act on anything that come before the council.
Months.
Yeah, for 12 months, and that might be a good way to go, too.
But that's a charter city, correct? They have different rules.
Mr. Mayor, Council, yeah, it's a really good point. So Santa Ana has adopted the Levine Act and applied it to their council. They're a charter city, so they can do that. That likely couldn't be done here. Again, it's not tested, but yes, Santa Ana has that ordinance in place.
If we were so bold as to test it, and someone were so bold as to sue us, what's our liability?
What's our exposure?
What's our exposure
Yeah.
in a situation like that?
The exposure for a constitutional challenge like that is, the biggest exposure is likely attorney's fees, which could be significant. If there is a contract in play or in question, then there are those damages as well. And so you're looking at a potential six-figure sum with fees and those damages from, say, a contract award that wasn't received.
All right. Well, I have a series of motions which I'd like to go through, copying from Councilman Robinson. And let's see how we come up. Number one, at the bottom of page 1, is to enact an ordinance to place a limit on campaign contributions of $250 from any single person, family, company, or organization. This limit applies to any election cycle, a 4-year cycle.
I'd like to make an amendment to that, because truly, I think that campaign contributions, I would be okay with 500. I'd be okay with 1,000, no more than 1,000. But if we could do that, if we were going to raise that money, that dollar amount, we could break it down. Say, if we're going to do a $1,000 campaign, maybe we could say $250 per year, per person, family, company, whatever. So, I don't know how anyone else feels about that, but I think $250 straight for a 4-year term seems a little low.
So you want to eliminate the 4 years?
Yeah.
The whole thing that
Yeah,
says this
instead,
in any 1 year?
yeah. If it's $250 a year, I'm okay with that, or $1,000 for every 4 years. I don't know how you guys want to word that. If maybe it's just $1,000 per election cycle instead of $250, then people can donate whenever and however, up to $1,000.
And I agree with that for the fact that every year we file our 460s, and it's a yearly process, and so it's from January to December. So I do agree with that.
All right, so I'll strike the sentence, "This limit apply," and just add to the end of that, "in any 1 year."
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
So, in general, I'm not going to be supportive just because I feel like it does move into the dark, but I'm going to help you out a little bit here and kind of help you out against my vote so that you can look at this you can see where loopholes have occurred and how to try to avoid them, although I think there's plenty out there and you can't avoid all of them. Google, or now Alphabet, right, has hundreds of entities. And serving on the AQMD board, I'm subject to the Levine Act, or essentially the exact same thing. Every single time we vote on a Google item, because we do a lot of advertising on Google, and we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, so it's a significant amount of money. Our attorney there lists all of the entities, all of the sister companies, the LLCs that Google has. And they literally have at least in the dozens, if not in the hundreds. Now, I don't get any contributions from Google in any way, so it's really easy for me to pass over. But if you don't include a provision like that, then a company that has 27 LLCs, they're 27 different companies. They could all write $250 checks, and it becomes a heck of a lot of money, right? So there's a lot that goes into this, and like I said, those that want to try to find a way to get their candidates elected, they're going to find every loophole they can, both the ones that are in the light, somewhat in the light, and completely in the dark. And that's why I'm just supportive of it being as in the light as possible, and just keeping no limits there. Not that, I think it's pretty rare that anyone's ever had, contributions into the many thousands of dollars, and I know I've had a few, but it hasn't been a lot. It's been 3, 4, 5, something like that. There have been independent expenditures that have supported me or supported some of my candidates that I was running against into the I can only guess into the over $100,000. And I had no idea who those people were or, what contributions were being given. And I hear what you're stating, Mayor Pro Tem, about it's different when you receive the contribution versus when it's just benefiting you but you don't know about it. And I hear it from a personal ethics standpoint. I feel like we're probably symbiotic in our belief that if even $1 is going to influence your vote in some way, that is horrible. It doesn't matter what the dollar amount is. That should never happen. And so I don't know how you stop it from happening, but how I have always viewed campaign contributions is I have a pretty consistent set of opinions that I've had since I first began running. And those, for the most part, none of them have changed. People knew what my position is. They wanted to support me because their interests aligned with my positions. If my position changed from where I was previously to where I am today, then someone should really call into question why it changed. That's really, really important. I should be able to clearly articulate why my position changed, and if there was any type of contribution in any way, people should start with that question. So you used to believe this, now you believe this, and somewhere in the middle, somebody gave you $1, $1,000, $10,000, whatever it might be. Did the money cause the change? But if I've always believed something since before I started running, and I continue to vote that way, clearly the money didn't influence it in any way. It only influences it when my position changes, right? And again, it shouldn't matter what the dollar amount is. So I'm not supportive of the contribution limits because I feel like it pushes it into the dark, but I wanted to give you that one piece of advice. So I don't know if there's a way that the city attorney could advise you on a way to try to close that loophole. I'm sure there's going to be tons of them, but at least that's one that I'm aware of that you'd probably want to close.
We could, next to company, we could say or related company.
And maybe the best way to do this is if there's a motion obviously, but if this passes, to give me direction to draft as comprehensive language as possible within the bounds of law. This has to come back to the council via ordinance anyway, at which point we can discuss that more detail.
And I think that's true of all the things we're doing tonight.
Yeah.
We don't expect it to come back the way we're sending it to you, that you would change it. What you say is very true. There was a company, and I won't mention who it was, and they gave money to council people, and I won't mention who they were. But they used to give $250 from the president, $250 from the wife, $250 from the company, $250 from the subsidy, and unless you did your homework, and $250 from the lawyer, they built it up and managed to keep it all under the threshold and yet do it that way. So, that's actually been done in our city.
Yeah, and I know that you can close, well, I'm pretty confident that you can close the loophole with respect to the company entities. But the individuals, even though they're employed by the company, they're contributing as individuals. They can't, by law, receive any type of reimbursement from their company. I don't know if that affects local elections, but I know it definitely does federal, and I'm not sure about state, but definitely federal. And so this has been a big issue in the city of LA. It's been discussed because they have limits, and then they were finding that there were contributions coming from people up to the limited amount, so $500 from an hourly employee working at that company who was making $25,000, $30,000 a year, and somehow he's giving $500 to a city council candidate that he's never met before, and he can't even remember writing the check. So how did that happen, right? And clearly there's some fishy stuff going on there, and so LA's been trying to close that loop. But again, since they're donating as private individuals, as long as they're not being compensated for that, I don't think that you can keep that from happening because they have a constitutional right. That's a freedom of speech for them. But for the companies, you definitely can't close that loop. I shouldn't say definitely. I'm pretty sure. You can be the one to say definitely.
Okay, so that motion then is in any 1 year, the $250, and all related company would be the changes on that motion. Do we have a vote? Oh, let's vote on that.
Do we need to make a motion? I'll make a motion.
I thought I made the motion and you had second.
I did second. That's right.
That motion carries with Councilmember Robinson opposed and Councilmember Voight's abstained.
Okay, the next one is something that suggested from the city attorney's report, starting on page 2, to include in contracts and RFP reporting requirements the provision that any contribution, money, in-kind services, loans made to any city council member in the previous 48-month period be disclosed on a separate form accompanying the submission. And this is like public shaming, or, you know, I don't think it's public shaming, but public highlighting, transparency, you know.
Is there a way, when we're voting on an item, that maybe we could add it to the minutes if someone has received donations? Not that they would be recusing themselves?
That comes later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is just the first one there.
Oh.
Any comments on that one?
Not from the public, no, sir.
Can you clarify that a little bit more?
To include, LSA is, who were here last time, is, did a proposal to do the CEQA for the Toll Brothers. So, but they didn't disclose that they had contributed money to council members, right? So what we're saying in here is that when they do that, the next time they do a proposal, there would be a page that says, did you contribute any money to council members? And it would say, yes, I gave Leah Basil $15,000. I gave Jim Gardner $2.
Okay, so it's for vendors. That was the part that I was missing. It's vendors, people wanting to do business with the city.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, contracts and RFP recording requirements.
Mayor, again, this is your previous 48-month period. I think that we're stretching the extension of that. I think that we cycle into where most campaign finance laws are 6 months after a vote or 12 months prior to a vote, and you're including a 48-month period.
How much less do you want to make it?
12. I think that 12 months and 6 months is what they generally. In fact, in law, that's what generally, is it a 12 months, 6 months reporting for that?
Mr. Mayor, Council, it really just depends. The Levine Act is a 3-month, 12-month. The Form 460s are 6-month. Indian Wells has a requirement that goes 4 years. Now that's not state law.
Levine is the one that protects most of the.
That's the one that applies to appointed commissions like AQMD, and that Santa Ana has adopted through their charter.
So that's 3 months.
That's 3 months and 12 months.
3 months, 12 months.
And just for clarification, the Levine Act also applies to our own planning commission, right?
That's
So
exactly,
they
that's
were
correct.
run for office. So by state law, our planning commission has to stick with that number, but I'm good with whatever you want. I think the more light we bring to this, the better. At some point, it becomes a little onerous on individuals and companies, depending on how much they contribute to and understanding local regulations and things like that. But if in the pre-bid conferences that we have with bidders, if that's highlighted, then okay, they'll go do it. So I don't have a problem with it, whatever time frame you pick. So.
Yeah, most companies contribute every 2 years, but some do wait the 4-year period. That's why I use the 48 months, because there are some who only do it with the election cycle. And it used to be in the old days, people only used to raise money every 4 years, but nowadays that's changed. People are raising money.
But again, the election cycles are 2-year cycles, and so 2 years is usually, and I think that you have Santa Ana and many of the agencies, it's 12 months, 6 months just for reporting periods for access to records.
Yeah, I don't mind reducing it to 24 months. But I know they do it every 2 years. Lots of them do it every 2 years. So we'll make that 24 months. And then, can we have a vote on that one?
I'll second if we need a second.
The Mayor Pro Tem seconds, and
That motion carries with Councilmember Voight abstained.
okay, and the next one is the one that Councilman Robinson mentioned, to require that any city council member having received any contribution from any person, family, company, or organization disclose this fact at the start of any discussion in which this person, family, company, or organization has any interest, including a remote interest. And the city clerk shall enter this information in the official minutes. And the other two will strike.
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion?
I think the one that I'm probably most confused about, and I think that could potentially cause some conflict or arguments in the future, is this family part. For instance, I have no idea what your wife's maiden name is, so if her brother, or I don't know if she has siblings or anything like that, but if they were to give you money, I would have no clue, right? And, or if they were to give me money, I'd have no clue they were related to. So I think that's where, I don't know how that might get interpreted, and so maybe you could help us out a little bit.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Council, it's a good question. I'm taking this as general direction, as we discussed previously, and we'll come back with specific language that functions within the parameters that the case law allows.
Yeah, and I think that's a good comment, and yes, you have that latitude.
Yeah, because, I see this as something that can help clarify a lot of stuff, and which is great. I don't want it to become a point of contention where we attack one another over it, and I hope that doesn't happen. I mean, I think that we're trying to work in a very collegial way, so that's great. But that is my concern down the road. So the more clarity we have when we do actually enact this, the better. So
Yeah,
any event parts.
I think you're right. The transparency and the clarity there, then it's out there, so there is no reason to get huffy or strange about it. All right, there's a motion, a second,
Second.
and vote.
Councilmember Voight. Sorry, we're just waiting. Oh, never mind. I am so sorry. I pushed the wrong button. Would you please revote on that item? I apologize. Did you vote? There. That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, now the last one, I'm listening to Councilman Robinson on that issue with the cities and the contracts, and because we do that to the lowest possible bidder, there really is no discretion involved in that. So I don't.
I don't think it's appropriate, then we probably should just scratch it.
Yeah, so I would scratch it. Unless somebody else feels very strongly to keep that in, I would scratch it. Okay, scratch it. Okay, item D, City Council Code of Ethics.
All right, Mayor and members of the council, I've got this one. So as you know, the City Council adopted its leadership principles in 2001, and these promote standards of personal and professional conduct for the City Council, commissions, and committees by addressing conduct in public meetings, expressing differences in opinion, treatment of fellow elected and appointed officials, political campaign issues, and other potential conflicts of interest. As noted in this slide, cities may address this issue differently, and options may generally range from adopting leadership principles, as the city has done, a code of ethics, including code of ethics language in a municipal code, or even establishing a review board to decide whether certain cases rise to the level of a violation. So violations associated with campaign practices, potential criminal actions, and violations of a local jurisdiction's code of ethics, they're handled differently depending on the circumstances. So let's give you an example here. The Fair Political Practices Commission, that's a 5-member nonpartisan commission that administers state law regarding campaign financing, conflicts of interest, lobbying, and government ethics. As an example of an issue reviewed by the FPPC, it would be improper use of campaign funds. Now, alternatively, the Orange County District Attorney's Office has a special prosecutions unit to investigate and prosecute complaints involving misconduct by public officials. The District Attorney enforces violations with criminal prosecutions or civil action. These would include examples such as bribery, embezzlement, and extortion. Local city councils enforce the Code of Ethics for behavior or conduct issues not addressed by FPPC or the District Attorney. So punishment for a violation of the Code of Ethics is typically public censure, which is a formal and public condemnation of an individual's transgression. So it's stronger than a simple rebuke, but not as strong as an expulsion from a position. So in terms of your policy considerations, based on the preliminary research that we've done, and based on the conversation we've had here, cities address the question of ethics in a number of ways. Some agencies adopt a policy or code of ethics that promotes best practices. As a measure of additional transparency, some cities make it easier to file a complaint with the city, the FPPC, or the DA's office by posting information online and links to certain forms. And then some cities codify their code of ethics and may even establish independent officers or review boards to address concerns or complaints raised by a member of the public or the city council. There's a wide range of potential options, and of course, as with the other items, this was brought to us as direction from the City Council, so any further action is at your discretion, but we are here to answer questions for you. Thank you.
Public comments?
Yes, sir. Kristen Eldred.
Hi, welcome.
So tonight, we just talked about ordinances revolving around contribution limits. And it's clear that the law has many shades of gray. And one of the things that has caused recall and a lot of upset by the public is the pay-for-play feeling that some people think have happened here in the city of Lake Forest. So while we may not be able to legislate recusal via an ordinance, what about addressing recusal via code of ethics? So in other words, we ask the City Council to agree via their code of ethics if they have received a contribution for someone who has a matter before the council, that they voluntarily recuse themselves. So just a thought to consider, that we may not be able to do that via ordinance, but maybe the code of ethics. That's it.
Okay, thank you. In fact, when the question has come up, the city attorney often makes just exactly that point, that while, it's not illegal, such and such and such and such, we might deal with it as a matter of ethics. The issue there becomes whose ethics. So that becomes a funny thing. And so one of the things we have talked about is getting somebody who's an expert on ethics, an ethicist, I guess, is what you would call that, like a university professor of ethics or something like that, to give us guidance on, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And is that a is that within the common core, or are you going outside the core so that we could have guidance in terms of that? But yeah, that's one of the ways it could be used. We do it all. I think we've only done it once that I recall. One case where we did a censure, and it wasn't really clear, what that process was. And I personally, I'm looking at something that has a more defined complaint process, like, was it Riverside or one of those? It's Riverside, had a really detailed, so everybody knows what it is. And just, I don't think the code, personally, I didn't think the code itself, I think it's appropriate, but just needed to have things built around it, like what the complaint process is, having that independent person to specify penalties if there are penalties, and to just tune up what was there, rather than to dramatically change what was there. But did we have any other comments?
No, Your Honor.
No? Okay. And comments?
People bring this up a lot, the Code of Ethics, and I think that we are held to a standard up here on the dais. And as reading the staff report, and reminding myself when I first came on the City Council, the Lake Forest Leadership Principles, which is actually a list of how to act in conducting public meetings, is Section 1, and Section 2 is conduct in office. And it seems like it's suggestions to live by. And in reading my staff report, the City of Huntington Beach actually brought forth a Code of Ethics with a preamble and a pledge. And then it states the Code of Ethics as clearly defined. And I'll read those to you. Responsibility. I understand that the community expects me to serve with dignity and respect, as well as being an agent of the democratic process. I avoid actions that might cause the public to question my independent judgment. I do not use my office or the resources of the city for personal or political gain. I am a prudent steward of the public resources and activities. Consider the impact of my decisions on the financial and stability, the social stability of the city and its citizens. Fairness. I promote consistency, equality, and non-discrimination in public agency decision-making. I make decisions based on the merits of the issue, including research and facts. I encourage public discourse, engaging in the decision-making process, and support the public's right to know. Respect. I treat my fellow council members, staff, commission members, and the public with patience, courtesy, stability, and civil respect, even when we disagree on what is best for the community or its citizens. Honesty. I am honest with the elected officials, staff, commissioners, boards, and the public, and others. I prepare to make decisions when necessary for the public's best interests, whether those decisions are popular or not. I take responsibilities for my action, even when it is uncomfortable to do so. It goes on, and it actually has I acknowledge the receipt of this form, and it's signed by the board member and the city clerk. And I think that this would be a great way for us to publicly state, along with the leadership principles. And so I make a motion that we accept something like the Huntington Beach Code of Ethics as a Lake Forest Code of Ethics, where we all sign and pledge ourselves upon this, with the city clerk signing the affidavit.
I like that idea. I think that's a great idea. Before we would just approve the Huntington Beach one, although I do agree with everything it says, before we do that, maybe we should have, I think you suggested an ad hoc committee, maybe just to do a final review to make sure that there's everything included that we think appropriate, but definitely modeling the Huntington Beach ethics. What do you think?
Yeah, I had the same thought. That sounded really good, but I'd like to have the ad hoc committee to review that and to check the Riverside process, talk to an independent person. One of the things when I was a clinical psychologist, and it's a board of psychology, and there's an ethics thing there, and so they'll have ethical principles, and then they have little vignettes. so-and-so did this and that. And then, and the FPPC, I think, has that too, those vignettes. Those vignettes are very helpful, because otherwise you're left as, every time I ask you a question, what would a responsible person think? And you say, well, I don't know what a responsible person would say. So having those vignettes crafted by someone who is a professor of ethics who says, yeah, this is mainstream thinking, but here you're going way off, that would be very helpful. Because a lot of this, it's words, but where's the real practicality of it? So, yeah, I don't mind including that or the Riverside, but what I'd like to do is to get the committee. I was suggesting the mayor and the mayor pro tem and the city attorney, but I know, Colonel Cagley, you're interested in this area, and you had a lot of experience, so I would bow out and let you
I'd be willing to do that.
Yeah.
I'd be glad to work with that.
So I would make a motion that the ad hoc committee consisting of the mayor pro tem, the Colonel Cagley, and the city attorney to review and update the current code, create a complaint process, develop appropriate penalties, identify an independent person to provide guidance on ethics, and add to review the Huntington Beach.
I think this kind of insinuates, a contract. And I think that it as much as I read the leadership principle when I got elected, and I did so in other times when I've been challenged up here, whether it be having a part-time job outside the city of Lake Forest or my contributions. I think that I went back to this, and this actually kind of makes almost feel like a contract. I've signed it, the city clerk signed it, and I've agreed to live by these principles.
Yeah, it says a lot when you actually pen your name to something. It allows makes it more valid somehow. So I completely agree. I like that idea.
I'm supportive of it. I'll vote in support of it. I think what's most important is each one of our own personal ethic, right? Because those who support me are going to like what I do. Those that don't are going to try to use something in this to say they think that I violated something there, right? I discriminated against a contractor, even though I said I was going to be non-discriminatory. And, it's personally I can know and believe that I didn't, but they're going to know and believe with whatever information they have that I did. And that's where the conflict arises. So, I'm supportive of this, and I think that we should do it. I think a contract and signatures from us is great, but really we need to hold ourselves to the highest level internally, and no one else can ever know that, right? I mean, it's just how we conduct ourselves, and people are going to have different views based on our position on something, or whether we cut them off as we were driving up here, or they're going to have there could be just a wide variety, and every government agency tries to go through this, and it's important that we do it on a regular basis. So I'm glad we're doing it tonight. I'm confident that it's not going to solve every concern that anyone ever has about ethics. I guarantee you that there are going to be people in this town that think all five of us, different people probably, but they're going to think all five of, maybe the same person thinks we're all unethical, but different people will question our ethics, and so again, what's most important is that when we walk into this room, that we check ourselves, right? That's the best that we can do is and I've said it on a number of occasions, and people have disagreed with me about it, but I want to be able to go home from this meeting, put my head down, and sleep soundly and smoothly, knowing that I did what was best for the residents of Lake Forest. That's the best that I can do. There will always be someone who thinks that I did a horrible job tonight, and that everything that I did was completely contrary to the code of ethics. And there's nothing that I can do about that. I can try, but it's their opinion is going to be their opinion. So again, supportive of it, but I don't think it's going to solve everything, but I'm glad we're doing it.
All right, then I think that's a motion and a second. Let's vote.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, number E, appointment of commissioners.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, we've reached the magical hour of 9:30.
Oh, okay. 9:30 is our new magical hour?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The magical hour is the time in which the council has determined that we go brain dead. And any decisions we make after this are going to be awful for everybody involved. But we could say that we still have 20 minutes left in us or something like that. So we have to vote whether or not we want to extend at this point. So,
I'll make a motion.
okay, that we extend? Okay, until 10, do you want to say? Or?
Do we have to give a time limit? Thanks, Mary.
No, an alternative would be to just, I could suggest just get through the rest of your letters on this one and then go to council comment and call it a meeting, and we can bring back the other item.
We still have comments from incoming mayor and outgoing.
Yes, by the time we get to that, we will be brain dead. That's too important a subject to go with our brain dead. All right, so there's a motion and a second to extend.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
I seconded.
Okay.
Yeah.
That motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, let me ask you this question. We have E and F. Do we have any speakers on E and F?
No, Your Honor.
Do we have speakers on item 21?
No, Your Honor.
No, no speakers on it. Okay. Well, then let's go and get the E and F out of the way. Item E, appointment of commissioners.
Mayor and Council, this was another item that you requested at your last meeting. This one is a very short presentation. So the Title II in the Lake Forest Municipal Code, it prescribes the method by which the City Council appoints members to boards and commissions. So essentially, when two of you and your terms are up, you get to appoint 2 commissioners. When 3 of you are up, you get to appoint 3. And when there's an end of term or a vacancy for a commissioner appointment, the city clerk's office sends a notice, lets the public know that that opportunity is available, and the city council has an appointment process. And that typically includes an application that is required to be submitted by the potential commissioners to assess their interest in that position. It asks some basic questions about why they wish to serve the city. In addition, the applicants are also encouraged to submit a resume to assess additional qualifications that may be germane to the position. Then subsequently, there's an interview by the entire City Council at a public meeting. There is a vote of the City Council, and the commissioners are appointed by a majority vote. Any change in this process would require an amendment to the municipal code. And as always, we're here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
This item was suggested by someone from another side. I think it was Huntington Beach, where they elect each council member appoints a commissioner rather than the majority appointing the commissioner. What happens then is if you have a majority, then you tend to have commissions, all of whom are appointed with the same philosophical outlook of the majority. So the way this is done in other cities, which I think is Huntington Beach, is by each person appoints an individual commissioner. Any comments or thoughts on that?
I like the idea of each person picking a commissioner. It does reduce the majority mentality, so that everyone actually gets a voice.
Any other comments?
I'm supportive of it. The one comment that I would make is I think it gets a little confusing down here with the mayor pro tem, and most senior member in 2019. I think that the best way to structure this would be those that are elected in November of 18 get to select for January 2019. Those who are elected
That's
in
a good
November
idea.
of 2020. That way.
So the new people do the new thing.
Yeah. Otherwise, it starts getting really confusing.
I know.
I
know.
But I see where you're going. But I'm supportive of that. it's another one of those things where I've been supportive of this concept for the last 5 years. I don't recall it ever coming to the council, but and I never brought it up because it really didn't matter. And to me, I was fine with the commission the way it was and going through the appointments. And some may say, well, that's because the commission always voted your direction, as you so appropriately put in some blogs a few years ago. There were a lot of appeals of commission decisions because they didn't do whatever I thought they should do, or what the majority of the council felt, or something like that. So it wasn't always the case, but I've liked this process. I think it makes sense. The one thing that I would caution all of us with is trying to use that by extension to influence the commissions. So I have very rarely talked to commissioners. And I've let them do their jobs. On a few occasions, some of them have called me to ask my opinion, but I never reach out to them. Once we appoint them, they're there to do their part, and if a decision gets appealed to us or comes to us through some natural process, that's my opportunity to make a decision there. I don't need to influence, at the commission level. And that's one thing that I've seen when a council member appoints a commissioner. They tend to have a very close relationship. It could be just because the commissioner starts worrying that if I don't do what the council member wants, they're not going to appoint me again. So you just, similar to the comments that I make with the Chamber of Commerce whenever they come for their annual service contract with us. That should not be a reason why I don't support the Chamber of Commerce because they came to criticize some vote that I had. They're either providing a good service or they're not. A commissioner is either serving the community well or not, and I shouldn't be penalizing them because I don't like certain things they're going to do. I know it gets a little weird with commissioners in that if you don't like the way they're going, then you might not want to reappoint them, but at the same time you don't want them in fear of that and then just doing your bidding, basically, right? So,
what did you think of the idea of making it subject to agreement by at least one additional member of the council? And my thought there was so that somebody so far out, it's their best friend, and they're appointing them, but everybody thinks, that's a crazy appointment.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I mean, there's a lot of different structures. At the county level, there's a commission right now that has a position open, and I've talked to one of the people that's applying for it, and he has the support of the supervisor, but I guess they need a majority, so the supervisor recommended that he reach out to all the rest of the council members, because I guess they need a majority, but supervisor, but the supervisor gets to select, but still needs a majority. This is even less than that, so I'm supportive of that. I don't have a problem.
I have a question, if I may, Your Honor. Would this be, with a new district coming into play, would this be a commissioner appointed from each district or just at large by each member of the council? I ask that question for a reason because, as you know, Lake Forest HOA 2 has 3 commissioners on one commission, and I think that that's not really getting the city of...
Yeah, and my feeling would be that it's not done by district, that you're looking for the best person to do the job, and if the 2 best people were in the same district, why would you go with the...
Just a question.
Yeah.
The surrounding cities, whether it be Irvine to the north or Mission Viejo to the south, all have a one-person, one commissioner policy, so where they actually have already enacted what we're considering here tonight, where each council member gets to appoint. I think it's worked well for both of those cities, and so I have no...
And do the other council people have to give their consent?
That's funny when you bring that up. I actually don't know. I don't recall.
Worth looking into.
All right, well, while you're crafting that, then, whatever the standard practice is, let's do the standard practice. All right, then let's vote on that. Oh, yeah, that's a
I'll
motion
second.
and a second.
Oh, Dwight seconded it.
I think Councilman Robinson.
That motion carries unanimously.
All right, and finally, number F is the council vacancy. And we know we occasionally have vacancies. Well, we did once, just the one time, with Peter Herzog. And so this is in other cities do this, and one of the cities up north does this. They actually have an ordinance that says when there's a vacancy, the next highest vote getter is the person. I'm sorry. Report.
No offense, Mr. Mayor, Council. This is the last report. I will be brief. Filling council vacancies, it's a process regulated by one government code, Section 36512. The City Council may also adopt its own process. State law, however, requires that any vacancy is filled within 60 days. The current process, which was in place when Dave Bass was appointed, I earlier today confused him with Mike Trout. It was an honest mistake. They're both fish, so I apologize to Dave. It's a true story. It's a true story. I did say Mike Trout. The current process is very similar to the current commissioner appointment process, where candidates are interviewed and selected and decided on by a majority vote of the council. Pursuant to Section 36512 of the Government Code, the council has the following options. One is to maintain the current process and appoint. And on slide number 2, you can see the way that works based on when they're appointed. We won't go into those details. The second option is to call a special election. The third option is to appoint a council member pending a special election. And finally, the council can adopt its own process, either adopt an ordinance requiring that it go to special election, or an alternative process including its own appointee criteria, which includes the criterion that Mayor Gardner mentioned in terms of the next highest vote getter. That concludes my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions of the council.
Public comments?
No, Your Honor.
No? Questions or comments here?
Yeah. This happens so infrequently for us that, there's a part of me that thinks that we should just go to special elections on it all the time. Because, again, once in 26 plus years now. So it's not a frequent thing. And I think giving the voters the opportunity is what's best. But if we were going to try something else, I would just want to include that as an option. So that we didn't have just one way of doing it. For instance, I'm only, about 15 months in my term. If I were to resign, I would hope that the council would decide to go to special election rather than to appoint somebody for 2.5 years. Whereas, if it was the last few months, maybe you might not want to go through that expense. So just some of those sorts of things to consider there. And then the other thing, again, extremely rare situations, but how I would probably suggest it if we were to go this route would be the if we include this option of the person who had the most votes in the most recent election that didn't win. I think I would probably go back to the election that they actually ran in, right? So if it's, and you may have even mentioned that in the past. I don't know. For some reason, I thought that was the case, but
it came up when Peter Herzog resigned.
Yeah.
And I was the person who came out of the money in Herzog's election. But between the time of Herzog resigning, there'd been another election, and Terry Anderson had beat me. So that, if you went back to the original election, it would have been me, but if you went back to the most recent election, it would have been Terry. So that issue came up in the one case.
Yeah, and it may be revisionist history in my own mind, but I seem to recall your comments being, if it's not me, it should be Terry. But I can't remember, but that's the way, I don't know it for sure, but that's the way I remembered it. But, so that probably makes the most sense, just when that position was, was last on the ballot. And again, we're dealing with a very rare situation, but so I'd say either that or, and, the reason why I would have the or special election, because I think it could get really, really weird in districts. As much as at the beginning, we're probably going to have a decent chunk of candidates. History shows in cities that eventually, especially incumbents, won't get challenged when they're popular in a district. And so I was thinking through this. Maybe my mind is a little weird, but an incumbent runs unopposed. And so someone files to run as a write-in candidate, and they only vote for themselves. Then the incumbent resigns, and they become a council member with one vote, with their own vote, right? So you could kind of have a little bit of discretion that maybe we go to a special election because that was weird. You give yourself a little bit of an out, but so those are just my comments there. I'm thinking through it like 10 different steps in different directions. So.
No, I think those are good comments.
Mayor Gardner, I actually believe that with us going to the district, we're 1/5 of the city now. Each district is 1/5 of the city. I think that it's really, if we isolate the ability for us to have the elections, I think that we're doing a disservice to the residents, because we have those people in that district, and then 2.5 years ago, that person may have came in second by just 100 votes towards him. I think that we have to allow the people to speak again. I think that for us to have the one election in that district is not going to be a huge cost to the city, because we're marginalizing the city so much.
I'm convinced. I'll strike it. Nobody else. Okay. Then
So are we saying then we're suggesting a special election in every case?
No, I think we'll leave it up
Just
to
leave
the
it.
circumstances.
Okay.
And then hope that the future council makes the right decision based on those circumstances. But yeah, I think it's just too convoluted, particularly going to districts to do this. All right, then item number 21 we will table, and that brings us for the next meeting. And that brings us to the city manager report.
I have nothing further this evening.
Okay, and that brings us to council comments. Councilman Cagley.
I need no comments, and I'll pass.
Okay, Councilman Robinson.
Kind of sticking to one topic here. I'll try not to take too much time, but since our last council meeting, had a joyous day that was followed by some sorrow, and they're very connected. So 2 Fridays ago, my daughter turned 16 in December. She went to the DMV. She got her license. So I've got a driver in the house from my children, which is very surreal. I'm only 42, so I don't feel that old, and so it's weird, having a driver in the house. I was talking to her so much that day just about driver safety. I have the entire time that she's been going through the permit process and so forth, but I'm just talking to her quite a bit, and we had a little rain that night, nothing too significant, but a little bit. That was the same night that we had the weird incident with the person that caused all the commotion down there off of Geronimo, not too far from Colonel Cagley's house. I talked to the police chief maybe about 10 o'clock, and I said, I hope the rest of your evening goes okay. Unfortunately, it didn't. We had an El Toro High School student who died in a car accident on Santiago Canyon Road. And it's very, very sad. I was there that Sunday with Councilman Voight at a impromptu memorial right outside the gym at El Toro High School. The young man, Angel Alvarez, was a cross-country runner, just 18 years old. He was a senior, about to graduate this June, and just seeing the sorrow on the students' faces was just tragic. And I attended the funeral the following Saturday, and just watching a family that had lost a young one. So while I have a driver, they're losing a son in a car accident, and he was a passenger, but nonetheless, still just a tragic situation for sure. What I would ask for council consensus on is that we send a letter to the county, whatever department seems appropriate, just outlining some of our concerns about safety along Santiago Canyon Road. There's so many motorcyclists that that lose their lives on that road. Just a number of people, and I'm not really sure what can be done, but just from a city perspective, that we just express our ongoing concern about safety along that road, and ask that they continue to look at safety improvements. Some of it is going to be driver mistakes, clearly, but there may be some improvements that can be made to that road that may be very costly. I don't know, but just expressing the city's opinion that we need to really concentrate on safety on that road in some way, whatever that might be. It could be the legends things, putting speed limits on. If that were all that it did and it saved one life, it's worth the paint for $5,000. A couple extra signs, something like that. I'm not really sure, and I don't want to be specific in telling you, but I'd just like a letter expressing our opinion, and so I'd ask for council consensus on that.
You have it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, like I mentioned, he was a cross-country runner. And so I was trying to think of a way that we might be able to remember him in some particular way. And the mayor, one of the ceremonial duties throughout the year is starting off the Firecracker 5K run on the 4th of July. Before the parade. It's about 7:30 in the morning. So I don't need council consensus, but I'll just ask the mayor if you're so inclined to mention him, that morning. It's not an event that we put on, so it's not like we could rename it or do anything like that. But if you could mention him that morning, I think that would be really great. And then I'd like to adjourn in his honor. And other than that, hope you all have a good evening.
Councilman Voight gets his council comments and his council, and
Yeah.
thank you for delaying it.
Mayor, just because of the time, if I could just read these at the next council meeting, I would abstain from this. But I'd like to concur with Councilman Robinson. Angel was not only a track member of the cross-country team, he was a leader, not only on the track team, but in the school. Talking to the students, he was the encourager, the guy that was the example, the leader for the team. So it was a really, really tragic loss of life. In fact, they just I think just today pulled his car out of the parking lot. It had been adored with flowers. And so because of that, the El Toro High School has suspended their every 15-minute program this year, which is a illustration of the cause and effect of drinking and driving, where they stage a DUI accident, a fatality in front of the school for the children to come out and see. I think it was so traumatic because he was so well liked at the high school that they don't think that the students could have really handled it. So there's debate on the council because some of the kids really want it because with the loss of Angel, I think it brings a reality home. But then with the student actors that are playing the fatalities or the accident victims or the actual drunk driver who's the student who's acting as if he was drunk but goes through all the procedures, is arrested after a sobriety check, and they put him in the back of a car and they turn the siren on and they leave the scene with that student in the back of the car. They're not sure if the students could really handle it, but it was a tragic accident. He was a beloved student, a loving son, and an encourager in all things. And so it was a loss to the community of Lake Forest. It was a huge loss to the track team and the student body there because he was so beloved. But I, too, with Councilman Robinson, was there for the makeshift remora where it filled the back parking lot. And the funeral was an outpouring of love by the students and former students and the administration from the school that came to Santiago Catholic Church for the funeral, and I think that was wonderful comments, and I think that kicking off the Firecracker 5K would be an appropriate thing for him to do, because there's nothing more that he liked to do than the run. His coach said that he was like an eagle in flight when he was running, with his long legs and his motion as he ran. He said it was almost like he was an angel floating on the pavement. I want to say include your prayers for the Angel Alvarez family, and I have nothing further.
Mayor Portola?
Well, I don't have anything that profound to say. But, yeah, it's a very sad loss of life, and I've got 2 little people, and the idea of losing one of them would change my life forever. So my heart goes out to that family. But on a business note, just a quick OCFA update. The OCFA is about to hire a new chief. They've narrowed down the search, and at our next OCFA board meeting, we hopefully will be selecting that person. So probably will be announced at the month after. So hopefully I have something to report soon on what's happening in the OCFA. And I'd also like to get council consensus on bringing up a discussion. I'd like to talk about setting up a parking ordinance in the city. So if I can get any consensus from the council that we can bring that back to discuss that.
Yeah, parking's almost a bigger problem than traffic.
Okay, so that's all I have. Have a good evening.
Mayor, may I have one more statement? I wanted to say happy Valentine's to you all, but remember to hug your loved ones, because besides Angel, we've lost Blades Bernstein in the last few months, and so you don't know what the day brings, and so remember to tell your loved ones, I love you, and happy Valentine's to you guys all.
Well, on that, I'll adjourn the meeting in memory of Angel Hours, and thank you for coming.